Hey everybody, how's it going? Thought I'd start a little early today as I was up and on the ball. I feel very refreshed and ready to go today. We're going to be hitting the ground running here, starting off with Melissa Lantsman apparently being sued for defamation along with Ezra Levant by the CIJA, which stands for, I'll get to that in a second, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, for claims that the new leader of that organization is allegedly anti-Semitic by Melissa Lantsman and Ezra Levant. However, you can judge for yourself whether or not that's the case. We're just going to observe the the press conference or announcement, I guess. I don't know how people really get their foot in the door for these announcements here. And this nice little backdrop. It seems like this is like the third-party announcement room. Anyways, we're going to get right into it, guys. So yeah, it's just Justus for now. I'm muted? Oh, no, I was okay. Oh, all right. 2 cents. No worries, buddy. I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not muted. I think I'm actually being a little too loud at points. Here, let's go to the reaction screen here. All right, guys, we're going to hit the ground running with this, and then we'll be getting into Poilievre's crackdown yesterday on certain hard drugs that are causing a major epidemic or crisis that some are calling a hidden emergency. Something that's been an emergency for a long time, in my opinion. Like pretty much Trudeau's entire prime ministership has been all about, like, you know, this has been a problem since 2014. We were looking at some statistics yesterday about this stuff of when, you know, certain ones that start with an F, avoiding certain trigger words here, kind of took and swept the streets. But we'll be going to that later, as well as Trump's new executive order. So which is hilarious that it has to even be an executive order, and if there's a limited amount of executive orders you can do, which I don't think there is, then it's kind of seems like a weird one to make an executive order in 2025, but I guess it's not this day and age. But anyways, we'll get into that as well. So here to start, we're going to start with former human rights chief launching defamation lawsuits. This is just like an hour ago, not even. Good morning, everybody, by the way. Good morning, Patty, 2 cents, and Rhonda, and James, Rob. And I think that's everybody I got so far in the chat.
I'd first like to acknowledge that I'm addressing you from the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. We honor the people and the land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I'm joined here today by Yavar Hamid, Ottawa-based human rights lawyer. Is it Friday yet? Sam Hirsch, with Independent Jewish Voices, and my lawyer, Alexi Wood, partner at St. Lawrence Barristers PC. My name is Birgit Etani. I am a human rights professional with a long history of fighting for justice for the most marginalized. From 2020 to 2023, I was the director of the Yukon Human Rights Commission, and before that, I spent 3 years as the assistant regional director of the Alberta Human Rights Commission. Towards the end of May 2022, a senior official with Justice Canada saw...
Yeah, like Melissa Lantsman is Jewish, so that this is kind of this took me by surprise, but I guess, you know, this guy is suing for defamation over claims of them calling him anti-Semitic by certain decisions he's made. I believe when he was part of a giant human rights group. I forget what that group was called. So he was a former human rights chief. Not exactly sure what the group exactly was called. It was Detani resigned as chief commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission shortly after his appointment of being the leader of the CIGA, or the commissioner of that, sorry, whatever the title is.
Sought me out and invited me to apply for the role of Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission. In June 2024, after a lengthy and rigorous application and vetting process spanning nearly 2 years and glowing recommendations from my previous employers, I was appointed Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission by the Governor General on the recommendation of the Justice Minister. I was set to begin my role on August 8th, 2024, and would become the first person of color and the first Muslim to hold this prestigious position. I felt honored.
There you go, right there, Cryptomeria.
Humbled and excited for the opportunity and the prospect of bringing real and meaningful changes to the Commission at a critical moment, while also advocating for Canadians, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds who face discrimination. On August 12, 2024, 4 days after my role was set to begin, I announced my resignation as Chief Commissioner. Shortly after my appointment was announced in June, I became the subject of a vicious smear campaign, painting me as a terrorist supporter and an anti-Semite. These comments led to a third-party investigation. Ultimately, the investigators released a report that found the allegations of anti-Semitism, bias against Jewish people or Israelis, and terrorism support and/or sympathy to be unfounded.
Wait,
That
what?
report
Wait. Someone investigated this? You can what?
is publicly available. Despite the report's unequivocal conclusion on these points, the vicious public attacks by a number of groups and individuals persisted in the following days and weeks. That's why I'm here today to announce that I've launched defamation lawsuits against those who spearheaded a targeted attack against me this past summer. Conservative Member of Parliament Melissa Lantsman, right-wing media personality Ezra Levant, and the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, CJA. If I may direct your attention...
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. So he is suing Ezra Levant, Melissa Lantsman, and the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. Okay, I misunderstood that whole thing. My bad, guys.
To the monitor.
Misinformation alert.
On the same day the report came out, the Deputy Leader of the Conservatives, Member of Parliament Melissa Lantsman, reacted by posting, "Anti-Semites should hold no position in Canada's government." This tweet was viewed over 44,000 times.
That's it?
It was retweeted more than 700 times.
Those are rookie numbers, buddy.
And liked more than 2,500 times. It was also quoted in an article by the CBC.
Well, like 2,500 times. That's pretty impressive, actually.
In October,
For that viewer to like ratio, that's pretty impressive for any kind of tweet.
2 months after the report was published, Ezra Levant called me a, quote, Islamic extremist who praised terrorism as a tactic against Jews, end quote.
Saying he praised terror. That's a pretty bold claim.
This tweet was viewed almost 46,000 times and liked 1,300 times. These aren't even the worst things that have been said about me over the last 8 months. The statements of claim are now public. They list many more examples of the defamatory statements that were shared far and wide. I cannot sufficiently underscore the impact that this vicious campaign has had on me over the past few months. It has caused serious and potentially irreparable damage to my reputation. It has impacted my mental and physical health. It has also affected my family and loved ones. I'm taking this step today to reclaim my reputation and to seek accountability for the damage that has been done to me.
Yeah, even if, like, you know, like the timing does seem a little sus here, but at the same time, I think that could also be he might have waited for the timing because he might have wanted to really hit her where it hurts, right? Because Melissa Lantsman will be the most affected by this timing, I think. So I honestly, you know, I don't think it's some grand conspiracy here, but I definitely think it's just this guy could be, you know, if you really want to stick it to them where it hurts, that's what you do is you'd run this story. You'd try and drag them through the mud, right? As they're, you know, being put in the spotlight.
And those closest to me. Je ne saurais trop insister sur l'impact que cette campagne vicieuse a eu mental et pour restaurer academics and journalists, meta-attacks, which have done tremendous damage les plus proches. Most importantly, my story represents an episode in a wider phenomenon of hateful attacks, which have done tremendous damage to many people across this country. Medical professionals, educators, academics, and journalists, parenthetically, often from marginalized and racialized backgrounds, have borne the brunt of a campaign of defamation.
Oh my God! Isn't the same thing going? You're basically trying to claim the same thing that's happened to the Jewish community is happening to the Muslim community as well. Is what he's trying to say. Is what I'm getting from this. He's not Sikh, Rob. He's not another Jagmeet Singh. He's not Sikh.
Bullying, intimidation, and silencing, which has cost many their livelihoods. This trend often starts with allegations, which then lead to doxing, bullying, pressure campaigns on employers, then investigations. On many occasions, perhaps even in most cases, these investigations find the allegations to be baseless.
Yeah, like it shouldn't be happening on either side, just being clear about that. I'm just saying he's just basically saying that they're doing the same thing. Like they're both calling the same thing.
But the damage is already done. Too often, these baseless
No
allegations are accompanied
I'm just
by
the racist.
bigoted,
That's
Islamophobic, anti-Palestinian, or anti-Arab tropes, such as being terrorist sympathizers, harboring religiously extremist views, and holding quote-unquote un-Canadian values. It is dangerous to assert that academic research, being critical of a government, attending protests, and simply having a Muslim name are reasons for suspicion. That is un-Canadian. Normalizing these stereotypes not only harms reputations, it can also have negative impacts on the psychological and physical safety of their targets.
like, in my opinion, he's not wrong. Like radicals are everywhere in every district, right? But they don't represent the entire group, right? Like, and that's the thing is like, I understand that, and I agree with that point. However, like I would like to dig more into what he was doing and why they were saying this about him.
And the wider community to which they belong. We have witnessed the deadly impacts of Islamophobia here in Canada time and again. With the Afzaal family murders in London, Ontario in 2021, the fatal Quebec mosque shooting of January 29th, 2017, and numerous incidents of Muslims being verbally abused, spat on, and women having their hijabs ripped off. Shamefully, Canada remains one of the deadly...
Yeah, like I don't condone any of that. Like there's no need for that stuff. Like, you know, there's a difference between this like more extreme group that you see a lot of them protesting throughout the country, in my opinion. That's kind of where I see these people are a little more radical. I wouldn't say extreme, more radical, I guess. You know, sensational. I don't know the word. Like I would say those are, you can't lump them all together, right? Like I totally agree with that, so, and I don't think that any of that should be happening personally.
Deadliest countries for Islamophobic hate crimes in the G7. I stand here today on behalf of the countless others who have been targeted but who lack the resources to seek justice. It is expensive to litigate, and I'm crowdsourcing funds to help pay for this legal process. I want to take this opportunity to thank the many people who have supported me during these difficult times. They represent a large swathe of the Canadian population and are from many backgrounds and faith traditions. I particularly wish to thank the members of the Jewish and Israeli communities who have supported and defended me these past few months. To be clear, anti-Semitism is real, full stop. It is dangerous, insidious, and pervasive, and has increased significantly in Canada since October 7th, 2023. As a human rights advocate, I will continue to fight against...
Yeah, like ever since the crap in Israel, like ever since Hamas had that attack, like that's literally like what I'm talking about, right? Like there's a difference between like average day Muslims and Hamas supporters. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge difference between those two. I think people need to realize that. I think most people do, right? I think it's just there's a very small group, I guess, of people that don't, and they're just attacking the... I don't know. I just don't condone any of it. Is all I'm going to say. I'm going to stop. This is a crazy conference so far.
I will also continue to fight against Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism, which have also increased.
And now you're losing us.
And I will continue to fight against all forms of hate and bigotry. That is
for sure, Rob.
I'm here today to send a message. Those who use their platforms and positions to spew hate and misinformation must face accountability for their actions, which have real...
Yeah, like why is Melissa Landsman and like why isn't this just against Ezra Levant, who I believe is also Jewish?
Consequences. These dangerous actions cannot go without recourse.
Potentially.
Every one of us has an inherent right to live free from discrimination. We also have a right to defend ourselves when faced with allegations.
Yeah, like Ezra Levant is Jewish. Yes. Okay. I'm not wrong on that claim.
The ones that are the subject of this litigation. Thank you. I'd now like to invite my lawyer, Alexi Wood, to the podium.
Okay, well, we're not going to watch this whole thing. This is getting a little boring. But we got the gist of it. They're being sued by this guy for claims that he's anti-Semitic. Yeah. But anyways, pretty wild situation. I thought it was worth note just because you have Melissa Lantsman being sued. Anyways, now we're going to get into just some other stuff.
Imagine.
So we're going to start with just a quick recap on yesterday. And then we're going to get into the main stuff for today. I think we're all good here. Yeah. Okay. Let's go, guys.
If the town of Brandon were to vanish, that its 50,000 people suddenly died. That is the size.
We're just going to let the first like 2 minutes play, and then we're going to skip to the next video.
And scope of the fentanyl overdose crisis in the last 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. A small, beautiful city like Brandon has vanished from our lives. Since 2016, 50,000 Canadians have died of overdoses to opioids, 9 in 10 of whom have died as a result of fentanyl. More Canadians have died of opioid overdoses in the last 9 years than died fighting for Canada in the Second World War. They are real people. Brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, friends, and thousands more are still suffering. Countless of them are in homeless encampments, living in the hell of addiction and homelessness. It wasn't like this before Liberals radically liberalized drugs. We know what they did. They passed C-5 to allow traffickers to serve their sentences in their living rooms. They eliminated mandatory prison time. They opened up our ports and our borders. 99% of the shipping containers that enter our country, 99% of those shipping containers come in without any inspection at all after 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals. Super labs in Canada synthesize using precursor chemical ingredients that come into Canada from China and Mexico through our open border policy. But it's not happening. This is something that looks like an episode of Breaking Bad. But this is not happening in New Mexico in a TV.
Sorry, I'm actually rewatching Breaking Bad coincidentally before all this happened, so I'm just giggling to myself.
Drama. It is happening here in Canada. Real life, right now. In November of 2024, police dismantled what they described as the largest, most sophisticated illicit drug super lab in the country in Falkland, British Columbia. One of the accused was out of jail after earlier convictions. Police said they seized 54 kilograms of fentanyl. Now, that might not seem like a lot until you realize that it just takes 2 milligrams to kill a human being. That means there was enough finished fentanyl to kill 27 million people. Police found enough ingredients to make enough fentanyl to kill 95 million people. That's twice the population of Canada.
You said ingredients, so they could have been missing some ingredients to that, but I don't know, maybe not. And that is like Breaking Bad level stuff, honestly.
Police also found 390 kilograms of methamphetamine, small explosives, ammunition, silencers, high-capacity magazines, body armor, $500,000 in cash, and 89 firearms, many of which were, quote, loaded and ready to be used. Days earlier, police discovered a super lab in Langley, BC, that they say was capable of producing multiple kilograms of fentanyl on a weekly basis. A Government of Canada report confirmed, and I quote, seizures of Canada-sourced fentanyl in places like the U.S. and Australia suggest that the domestic production of fentanyl is likely exceeding the domestic demand and that Canada is now a source and transit country for fentanyl to some markets. The number of seizures of fentanyl at the Canada-U.S. border more than tripled between 2023 and 2024, rising from 239,000 doses to 839 doses. How did this happen?
So, yeah, anyways, we're not going to spend too much time on this. This happened yesterday. So just to touch up on this, so basically we're going to be getting to this next, shortly after the next video. This is kind of he's going to be introducing life sentences for kingpins, whatever that means. So I guess repeat offenders or large scale dealers. Like this is a kind of an like this is something that like El Salvador did, and it worked out. The statistics say it worked out great, but we'll see. I don't know how it is living there. I don't live there, but they did a similar approach to this, and it apparently dramatically destroyed anyone doing it. However, I don't know if this is what his exact definition of kingpin is, right? And I think that needs to be stated and outlined before I sign up all on board for this. More than likely, I imagine he'll be pretty reasonable about it. However, like I said, until we see the official legislation that would reflect this, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, let's do it like 100%, just because like that definition could be, I don't know how loose that definition is. I'm assuming it's probably pretty high and pretty hard to hit that definition, but yeah, it's just crazy. More than 40 grams will get you a life sentence. Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, we're not gonna watch the whole thing again. We watched yesterday, so we're gonna move on to the next thing here, though. Just kind of want to refresh up on it. I think he was talking about Kingpin from Daredevil. Oh, funny Saul.
Well, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is holding a media briefing. Let's take you live to Washington right now.
A gang member who has a prior criminal conviction for assault in the 3rd degree, causing physical injury. Americans are safer every single time one of these criminals is arrested and deported from our country. On another important and ongoing topic, the Senate is working fast to confirm President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees in the face of relentless media smear campaigns. As of right now, 12 members of the president's cabinet have been confirmed, most recently Pam Bondi, who, as you all know, I was just in the Oval Office for that swearing-in ceremony surrounded by Pam's lovely family, and we look forward to watching her serve as the Attorney General of the United States. According to CNN, President Trump is getting more cabinet picks confirmed so far than the average president in the modern era. Another success story. And we believe it's critical that Republicans in the Senate majority stay tough and keep their foot on the gas to confirm all of the remaining nominees as quickly as possible so we can continue President Trump's important work here at the White House and across our entire federal government. And lastly, throughout his historic campaign, President Trump pledged to restore common sense to our country. And he is continuing to deliver on that with an executive order that he will sign later today. The president will be signing an executive order keeping men out of women's sports.
So the fact this is an executive order, I feel like it's Trump making a big spectacle of the matter, but like it's just like what like did anyone if someone told you 20 years ago that in 20 years from now there will be an executive order to ban men from women's sports, would you have believed it? Like this is so wild. Like it's like reality TV, honestly, at this point.
Defend the safety of athletes, protect competitive integrity, and uphold the promise of Title IX. This common sense action from President Trump ends the disgusting betrayal of women and girls by the previous administration, who for years catered to radical activists who wanted biological males to be treated as women in workplace showers, competitive sports, prisons, and even rape shelters. Gender ideology insanity is over. Submissions from individuals across the country interested in participating in our new media seat at a future briefing continue to flood in. We are at more than 12,000 and counting. If you're watching right now and are interested, you can continue to apply on our new media website, whitehouse.gov/newmedia. And in the seat today, we have a longtime national television broadcaster. I'm sure many of you recognized her when she came in, Sage Steele, who is now the host of an incredibly successful podcast, The Sage Steele Show, on YouTube and all podcast.
This is a podcast ad now? What?
Platforms. And previously, Sage was
was that an ad? What was that?
Steele, who is now the host of an incredibly successful podcast, The Sage Steele Show, on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And previously, Sage was a fixture at ESPN from 2007 to 2023. primarily hosting Sports Center, which we all know well, before leaving the company to exercise her First Amendment rights more freely. We are honored to welcome her to the briefing room today. She will be joining the president at the big EO signing later this afternoon. I know many of you will be there as well. So Sage, why don't you kick us off on this very exciting day for women and girls across the country. Thank you for joining us.
It is exciting, and Caroline, thank you for welcoming.
Okay, so we've been listening to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt touting the swearing-in of Pam Bondi as the newest U.S. Attorney General, among other topics. Also, she mentioned that President Donald Trump will, quote, restore common sense to our country, citing the signing of an executive order a little bit later on today, which will basically...
Okay, well, anyways, that's pretty much the gist of that. I just wanted to go over that. I just thought it was just so funny that this is a thing. So, and this is like an executive order. Like that's a big thing in my opinion. Like,
willingness to reduce interprovincial barriers to trade and add up to $200 billion to the Canadian economy is palpable, and the provinces and territories are at the table with enthusiasm.
They have lost control of our national sovereignty by blocking pipelines, mines, LNG plants. The Carney-Trudeau Liberals have made us hopelessly dependent on the Americans. They've handed over our economic sovereignty to President Trump,
Janet,
who spots weakness.
As we keep our ears tuned to any developments on Canada's 30-day reprieve from Donald Trump's massive tariffs, focus has turned here to how to insulate this country from more roller coaster rides. Premiers met this morning with the Prime Minister to talk about breaking down trade barriers within our borders. And previously pipeline-adverse politicians are now talking about how to build out capacity to get our energy to markets other than the U.S. How would doing things like that affect our ability to withstand a future Trump-induced economic slump, and how realistic is any of it? David Dodge is the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and John Manley is a former Liberal Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. He's now a senior business advisor at Bennett Jones. Hi to both of you. Thank you very much for making the time tonight. Mr. Manley, I wanted to start with you on the question of this moment in time and whether or not you truly believe it is an inflection point for this country's not only political class, but the economy more largely.
yeah, it definitely seems like Carney's taken a lot of Poilievre's ideas, or maybe they're just good ideas and they're just common sense.
Well, I certainly agree with that proposition. I think, Vashi, what we've had here is that our basic strategy for Canada over 35 years has been turned upside down. And I had lots of experience, David will remember, promoting Canada around the world, and our investment thesis for Canada was this: we're a great country, rich in natural resources, lots of talented people, great institutions, stable institutions, rule of law, good educational facilities, research and development, and a guaranteed access.
We're gonna cut this for a second. We're gonna segue over to some things unfolding right now over on live broadcast. This is happening right now.
129 Peter Street, which is we're standing in front of 129 Peter Street, which is a city-run facility. It was opened up while I was a city councillor in Toronto. It was supposed to be a housing referral center, a place where people who are street engaged, living in encampments, living in shelters, long-term, chronically homeless individuals would come here. They'd be send them to, and because the federal government at the time left in, the federal government remarkably stupid who are homeless. If you're a young person running away from home, this policy.
We are housing people, trying to take an industrial effort to make sure that we are housing people, getting first-time home buyers into the market, and providing affordable housing right across the housing continuum. And while the Liberal government has done a lot when it comes to our national housing strategy, there is much more that we can do. Housing needs to be a human right in this country, and we need to be able to fulfill that promise.
Oh, we also have Trudeau making an announcement at 10 a.m. today, PST.
And so, as Adam mentioned, there are 3 pillars to this plan. One is ending homelessness. We talk about the toxic drug supply, we talk about overdoses, we talk about addictions, but if we are truly going to get people off the streets, we need to make sure that they have supportive housing to go to. So this plan would create an accord program with the provinces and territories where the federal government works to house people through an expanded rapid housing initiative, and then has agreements with provinces and territories to provide those wraparound supports to make sure that people can be successful and they can stay off of the streets and lead successful lives. It also means that we want to ensure that we are building more modular housing to rapidly increase the supply that we have available in our country. That is something that is so important. We know that we do not have enough houses in Canada to get people into the houses that they need. And so we need to build more modular homes that are climate resilient, faster and cheaper to build. We also need to accelerate housing production to build faster and smarter in Canada. When it comes to home ownership and market regulation, the housing market today is constrained by outdated models, zoning regulations, and a lack of investment in new housing infrastructure. We will partner with municipalities to streamline zoning and build more homes faster with a new round of housing accelerator funding. We also need to crack down on predatory speculation. And what Adam mentioned and what I'm very committed to is expanding support for the first-time home buyers program by boosting this initiative to make it up to 50% of an eligible mortgage. Right now it's between 5 and 10%, and we just don't see the uptake. But this can be fully repaid to the Government of Canada over a 25-year mortgage.
How would you implement that?
At the time of sale. But in a community like Toronto, where it is extremely expensive to get into the market, this will help first-time home buyers get a toehold in and increase their equity over time. We also will offer a tax credit of $2,000 on the provincial land transfer tax for first-time home buyers. And when it comes to ending homelessness and tackling affordability, we cannot be a prosperous nation of opportunity if we allow homelessness to persist. This policy tackles homelessness at the root cause, focusing on expanding supportive housing programs.
That's what I'm saying, Rob.
Assistance that provide not just shelter, but a path to stability. National supportive housing will ensure that people stay off the streets and that they are successful. And one of the most successful programs that we've had in Canada that the federal government has got out of the business of doing is cooperative housing. I want to supercharge cooperative housing models in this country, which provide access to housing across this continuum of affordability. We need to tackle homelessness and we need to tackle affordability. Housing is a human right, and this is something that we can do as Canadians. It is a national project and it is an imperative for us to do because every Canadian should have access to a safe and affordable and dignified place to live. So thank you very much, and I'm available for your questions.
Okay.
So look, the party has put forward an extremely aggressive fundraising deadline. They have tried to make it as hard as possible for only a few candidates to participate in this race. But what I can tell you is my campaign is powered by people. 85% of my donations are $200 or less, and I have received support from thousands of people across this country. We're doing everything to meet those fundraising deadlines, and I have to say that I am buoyed by the incredible support that I am getting from everyday Canadians. My campaign doesn't have the deep pockets of some of the other candidates, but what it does have is people power. And I have to say that we have had great fundraising results, and we're going to keep going. So despite the efforts of the party establishment to keep people out of this race, I'm in it and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, so if you want to, a Liberal Party that's one step further left than Trudeau, like, she acts like she's Santa Claus handing out toys here.
Absolutely, and I think it's an imperative for us. I think we can hit it by 2027, and one of the ways that I'm going to help increase defense spending is by increasing the salaries of our Canadian Armed Forces personnel. Our CAF members
Okay.
are there
Think
for us
everybody agrees
in
with
our
that?
time of greatest need. In COVID, in this city, when long-term care
Like
facilities...
with all the spending this government has done, why hasn't that been addressed? Like, you think that'd be a big priority?
were strained and were unable to contain their outbreaks, who went in? Our CAF personnel. When there are natural disasters around this country, who is on the front lines? Our CAF personnel. We do not pay them sufficiently for the incredible service and work that they do, protecting us and being there for us in our
must have
time.
ended. Just one sec, guys. Takes a second to reload here. Oh, great. So yeah, next we're gonna go over to Minister McGuinty. We're just gonna kind of follow. There's a lot of live stuff happening today. We're just gonna kind of follow for the time being. Come on, takes forever.
Go ahead.
This one. Okay. Let's go over to YouTube and watch it. Just want to finish that.
Us and being there for us in our time of greatest need. So we can do this, but we have to make that decision, and we have to support our incredible men and women who serve in the military. And the other way that I would go about that is by immediately appointing a procurement czar. We have so much military procurement equipment that is on the docket that we're not getting fast enough. And so not only do we need to ensure that our military is paid adequately for the work that they do, we need to make sure they have the equipment that they need to do the job. And so we need to really clean up and streamline our military procurement so that we can accelerate our commitment to 2%.
Okay.
Okay, oui, bien sûr. Les Canadiens ne peuvent pas ouvrir les portes. However, that is protecting the president. Il a mis nos jobs sans protéger. Merci.
I want them to ask about Poilievre's press conference yesterday. I want to see some liberals respond to that.
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to President Trump and his threat of tariffs, we need to ensure that Canada is protecting our economy. The long-standing relationship that we've had with the United States is obviously something that I would prioritize as Prime Minister. However, that relationship is also based on trust. And I think that what we've seen in the past...
which no one has any left of at all.
2 weeks and what we'll continue to see over the next 4 years is that we might not be able to rely on the U.S. as much as we have in the past. And so while we need to continue to nurture and develop that relationship, we also need to make sure that we can trade internally. And so we can't just rely on north-south trade. We also have to be able to trade internally, east-west, here in Canada, and also open new markets internationally. Honestly, the federal government has done a good job following the last Trump administration of building those trade relations with Europe, with Asia, with Latin America. But now we need to do everything we can to help Canadian businesses and products and services get to those markets. Great.
All right, Karina. Reporters are so quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, this is a plan for every community in Canada. And we have seen over the past couple of years encampments grow, not just in big cities, but even in my community in Burlington, in rural communities. And so we have to be able to work with every single community across this country to tackle the issues in the way that is reflected in their community. And so absolutely, this is a plan for every community in Canada. Great. Anything you want to add? No? Good. Okay, thank you so much. Merci. Okay.
Yeah, it's just you had a decade, right? Like it's a Cryptomira saying in there. 2 cents. Military is 1,600 recruits below normal levels. Jeez, that's seems a little concerning. Such a great job. We'd be broke in a month. Paul, liberal NDP code, pretend to care about the less fortunate, manipulate the system to improve your own wealth, steal all popular ideas to get votes, lie about everything, dodge any fallout. Yeah, I'd say that it hits a good chunk of what they're doing on most of it. I can't say they pretend to care, but they don't seem very genuine about certain things sometimes. It's kind of hard to take them seriously a lot of the time, especially when they're acting caring and concerning, and like everything they're doing is for our safety and best interest. I don't really trust it as much. Anyways, we're gonna go over now to Jagmeet Singh's press conference.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Nina. Maintenant, ici à Montréal, on a déjà eu des pertes d'emplois. On a déjà des travailleurs qui ont perdu leurs emplois. Ils ont un employeur pour vous. On a un plan pour vous aider. Et qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Les travailleurs, on doit défendre unionized workers who are leader. 15 employees.
Okay.
In Montreal, on va faire comme parti néo-démocrate avec les candidats, avec moi aujourd'hui, les candidats et candidates. Notre équipe va toujours prioriser les travailleurs et défendre notre pays. Right now, in this city, in Montreal, there are already workers who have lost their jobs because of the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs. ShearTex, a company here in Montreal, has already fired 40% of their workers. South Shore, a company that produces furniture, has fired 115 employees, all because of the threats of Donald Trump. Workers are already feeling the impact. And obviously, as a party, a New Democratic Party, that is always thinking about workers, our first thought is we have to put in place better protections for these workers. These workers should not be left on their own. They should know that there's a government there for them. And as Prime Minister, as a New Democratic leader, party leader, and my team, we are going to make sure we do everything possible.
As Prime Minister, like, I cannot take him seriously when he says that.
To protect these workers. One of the things we need is a better EI that better protects workers in this time of uncertainty where workers might lose their job. We need to make sure that there's protection in place for them. But beyond that, we also need to have an approach that makes us stronger, makes us more resilient. And so we need to look at a couple of changes, important changes. What we would do is change our procurement rules. We need to make sure that if we're spending public money, any public money, that it goes towards Canadian companies, Canadian contracts that hire Canadian workers, particularly unionized workers who are well paid. This is very important. If we spend our public money, it should go to Canadian workers, Canadian jobs, unionized jobs. We also have a lot of infrastructure projects. In those infrastructure projects, we need to require Canadian content. Thinking about steel and aluminum, we make it in Canada. Let us ensure that when we build, we're using Canadian content.
Content? Why not just say goods?
What is also very clear is we are very vulnerable to the whims of Donald Trump. We need to have a more resilient economy, one where we sell to more countries. So we need to have better relations with Europe, with Latin America, and in this particular time with Mexico, where we share some similar challenges. But there are many other trading partners and we need to diversify. We cannot be so vulnerable to the whims of Donald Trump. But what I find really surprising right now, at a time when we are faced with serious job losses, I've talked about the job losses here in Montreal already, and the tariffs haven't even happened yet. Just the threats have already caused these job losses. At a time when people are worried about job losses, people are losing their jobs, I'm surprised that Mark Carney has also added his voice to cutting jobs. I'm not surprised that Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative...
You're to attack Mark Carney now? It's just, he just comes across as such a moron. It's just like, dude, like he's just, like, who wants him as party leader? Like, who?
Want to cut jobs? That's what they do. But I am surprised that Mark Carney is also thinking it's a good idea when we're facing a potential recession and we're facing serious job losses.
Yeah, he's yapping about stuff he could have avoided. Exactly, dude. He's got, like, you know, it's just like, you can't take him seriously. It's like that person who whines about everything but never does anything to actually try and change it. You know what I mean? It just drives me nuts.
That he wants to add to that by cutting jobs at the federal level. I think that is wrong. I want you to know that my team, these incredible candidates behind me as leader, we are going to focus on workers. At this difficult time, we need policies that protect workers, not CEOs, not billionaires, not big corporations, but we need clear plans and clear strategies and policies that put workers first. And with New Democrats, that is what we will always do.
Oh, really?
With that, I'm ready.
Is that
for
what you're doing right
questions.
now with not having an election take place?
So you're talking about this is almost leader as Prime Minister. Is the campaign pledge something you're still hopefully going to push through Parliament before triggering an election?
Well, these are our pledges. These are things that we would do, but it's also things that the government could do right now. We could change our procurement rules right now so that we are spending public money on Canadian contracts or Canadian jobs in Canadian businesses, particularly those that are unionized. We can do that now. We can look at diversifying where we sell our products right now. And we absolutely need to improve our EI system right now so we can ensure that workers are not left in the cold in this difficult time.
Are you talking about limiting
I just
companies now or
he's such a moron.
I think we need to do that now. We need to do that now because it's shown us that we need a stronger, resilient economy where we buy more Canadian and build more Canadian. We need to build more of the things that we need in our own country. And the way we do that are by putting in policies that incentivize and encourage the purchase of Canadian products and the building of Canadian products. And one of the ways we can do that sustainably for the long term is to have better procurement rules so that whenever we spend public money, it is going towards Canadian products. I can think of one example, Via Rail, owned by us, owned by Canada. We needed to upgrade the trains. Those trains should have been built in Canada, creating Canadian jobs for the long term and jobs that were unionized and good paying. That is a better way to spend our public money. When we procure, when we buy things at the federal level, it should go towards Canadian jobs and Canadian businesses.
So we'll go to the next question, Pierre.
Like, it's not what he's saying that bothers me. It's just the fact that it's him saying it. This is French. Anyways, we got the gist of the announcement here. We'll move on. This is just aggravating to watch, honestly. Actually, let's just skip through the questions here. Let's just see if he is asked about Poilievre here.
Des valeurs est bon pour les gens. Ensemble des mesures pour aider les mais
like half it's French anyways.
companies with unionized employees going forward?
Absolutely. I want to see these procurement rules be the norm. These tariffs and these threat of tariffs have created a circumstance where we need to respond. But these changes are things that we should have always had. We should always be using our public money. If you think about it, we're spending public money on things that we need. So I mentioned the example, I think one of the best example is Via Rail. We own Via Rail, it's owned by Canadians. When we spend money on updating or buying new trains, those trains should be purchased in Canada. If we can produce those trains in Canada, we should be creating jobs in Canada. And we do have the facilities to do that. That is a better way to use our money. When we're trying to purchase things, we should look Canadian first so that we are building more in Canada. We are incentivizing companies to build important things in Canada. And to do that in a sustainable way is for companies to know that the first step will be we will prioritize Canadian companies. And then not just any companies. We want to make sure that these are contracts going to companies that have good paying jobs. And one of the best ways to ensure that.
So how are you going to see? You're going to go pick for Canadian companies that treat their employees well. You know, that I don't know if you've had a regular job in the last 20 years, Sting, but most companies treat their employees like crap. I got to say.
Those workers have safe conditions and good pay.
Doesn't matter if they're from here or not.
Workers are unionized. So absolutely, that would be a policy that I would put in place now to deal with the threat of tariffs. But moving forward, it should be a permanent policy. We need to spend our money in Canada. If it's a public money, it should go towards Canadian jobs.
Excellent. Now we'll go to questions on Zoom. We'll start with David Baxter with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Okay, we're halfway through this. We're just going to skim through the questions.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Can you hear me?
If the question I feel like is irrelevant to what I'm wanting to cover, we're going to skip over it.
Check 1, 2, 1. Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, sorry. You know, it was on our end. Can you just start the question over?
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Mr. Singh?
You can, yes.
Perfect. All right. So, yes, I want to go back to the EI bit there saying too many people can't access EI. How would you expand EI then? Since that sounds like what you're talking about. You want to expand eligibility there.
Well,
yeah, he basically wants to make it UBI. What about AI? Building train infrastructure is a good idea. Yeah, like the thing is, Kenzie, is like it's not the fact of what he's saying is bad. It's just the fact that it's him saying it. I don't take anything he says seriously. He's just an absolute sideshow. Like he's just like, I don't know. He might as well just be juggling up there. Be more interesting.
Absolutely. We need to expand eligibility. EI should be there for all workers. If you're working in this country, you should be able to access EI. And that is not how it works right now. As I mentioned, we learned this in the pandemic, actually, that only 40% of Canadian workers can actually access EI. So we need to have a better program that covers more workers. The way we do that, we work with the experts in the field. We ensure that we have the right policy that covers workers in the right way. So there's lots of ways for us to do that. We've had discussions about that. In fact, our labor critic, Matthew Green, has a host of concrete solutions to improving EI, and I'd be happy to lay those, bring those forward for you. But what we know is that we need to expand the eligibility. More workers need to be able to access it. And the second piece, which is just as critical, is the amount that workers get has to be sufficient to pay the bills. And right now, that is not the case. So those are the two kind of glaring problems that exist with EI, and we need to fix those immediately.
Just another clown in the circus.
Yeah, and just on the your Canadian content pitch when it comes to
I gotta check my
procurement,
wood stove.
saying, I see more Canadian content, like going in, like if it's steel, it should be Canadian steel. Are you picturing this being 100% Canadian steel, or would it be something like how it works for broadcast, where it's like 40 some odd % Canadian content is what broadcasters are mandated to put out in the airwaves?
Well, with our federal dollars, I want to see as much possible go towards Canadian. So I want to maximize that. We have certain stipulations that we have to look at, certain trade agreements, but we can absolutely encourage that with our procurement rules, with our purchasing power as a country, that we direct that towards Canadian jobs, Canadian businesses. It is clear, and it became clear in the pandemic as well, we don't produce enough of the things that we need in our own country, but we can. We have before, and we can again. How do we get there? By letting businesses know that if we spend public money, we're going to be spending it towards Canadian companies. That is a strong policy that will ensure we build more of what we need in Canada and create that predictability. That when a project comes online, when there's a bid, we're going to prioritize that bid or that contract going to Canadian companies first. And then when it comes to content, we build important infrastructure. We need to use Canadian steel and Canadian aluminum. We produce some of the best steel in the world, some of the best aluminum in the world. Let's require that in the construction of infrastructure. So we're building big projects. When we build roads, bridges, when we build things that we need as a country, let's use Canadian steel and Canadian aluminum. We can incentivize the strengthening of our economy with policies that actually go towards building more jobs in Canada.
Nous allons maintenant à Christian Noël avec Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Je comprends que vous avez énoncé des...
Par exemple, le projet, ce sont des...
Go to Kate McKenna with the CBC. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's in favor of this coalition anymore.
Avoid tariffs. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, good. Mr. Singh, a lot of the discussion about avoiding tariffs has been about fentanyl over the last couple of days. We've got Pierre Poilievre talking about fentanyl kingpins, and the Liberals are appointing a fentanyl czar. In your view, is this Trump threat really about fentanyl?
While fentanyl is serious business, it is deeply hurting our country. It is hurting people around the world. It is tragic. It is heartbreaking. And the pain and suffering caused is unimaginable. What Trump, though, is really about, and it is very clear, he is about making Canada the 51st state. That is what he is about. He has made that very clear. We don't need to guess about what his intentions are. He has repeated it. He wants to use economic pressure on Canada to put us in a weak position. He has been very clear. That is what he wants to do. So we need to fight back on what he wants to do. We need to reject that. And what does it mean when he wants to make us the 51st state? Well, he wants to privatize our healthcare system, creating billions of dollars for his billionaire buddies. We think that is wrong. That is wrong. We are proud of our healthcare system. Of course, we need to improve it. But in Canada, no matter who you are, no matter how much you earn, you can go into a hospital and get the best quality care. That is something that Canadians are proud of. We need to strengthen that. We got people like Pierre Poilievre, who not too long ago, within the past month or so, had a fundraiser at a home, I think it was here in Quebec, in fact, with the owner of that home is someone who owns for-profit hospitals in the United States. And that person,
aren't all hospitals for profit in the U.S.? Like, aren't they all designed that way? Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
And raised a lot of money for Pierre Poilievre. What did Pierre Poilievre promise that guy? What did he promise him to get that money, to get that fundraising? I would assume if he's meeting with someone who owns for-profit hotel or for-profit hospitals in the United States, that they were talking about for-profit healthcare in Canada. So Pierre Poilievre is prepared to sell out our healthcare system like Donald Trump wants to do. He wants to make what we have in Canada American, so privatize our healthcare. We want to defend it. It is a Canadian value. We believe in universal healthcare. We believe everyone should get the best care possible. We need to defend it. We need to invest in it. We need more frontline healthcare workers. We need more doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers. That's what we would do. That's what I would do as Prime Minister, defend what we have and fight back against Donald Trump. What Pierre Poilievre wants to do is speed up the privatization and the Americanization of our healthcare system, and that is wrong.
Americanization of our healthcare system. Okay.
Just as a follow-up, you mentioned earlier that Mark Carney would cut public service. Where are you getting that from? What informed that statement that you said? I don't see
yes,
that.
Call him out.
His own words. He recently made that announcement that he would cut public sector jobs. And I was surprised, as you kind of sound surprised as well. I expect that of Pierre Poilievre, who also wants to cut frontline workers. He's come out and said that. But I'm surprised that a candidate for the Liberal leadership would also talk about cutting jobs at a time when workers are worried about losing jobs. How does that make sense that you would cut jobs when workers are already facing serious job losses and we are looking at a recession? And that shows you Mark Carney's perspective of the world. If you're a billionaire, if you're a CEO, if you're a large corporation, I'm sure he'll be good for you. But if you're a working class person, if you are a worker in Canada, Mark Carney has shown you who he is about. He's about the billionaires. He's about the CEOs. He's about the big banks. He is not in it for you. New Democrats have one priority. That is you and your family. We are working for working people, and we are proud of that. Every decision we make will be about putting workers first. You can't say the same about Pierre Poilievre, and you certainly now can't say the same about Mark Carney.
Maintenant, nous avons Olivier Ferron-Boissé avec TVA. C'est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, merci Nina, bonjour à vous tous. Et aussi souvent les gens.
Absolument. Voilà. C'est nous. Si vous voulez, et maintenant, et de avoir.
Right, that's it, guys. That's it. I'll stop torturing you. I'll stop torturing you there. All right, we'll be going over to some new developing news. Whoops. Okay, so we have David McGuinty also, or our border. I don't know if he's our borders are. What do you want to call him?
La recherche qui va gouvernement. The thing the strategy will do is to. It's a continuation.
There we go.
Afternoon. Is it afternoon already?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are here today to release Canada's new
like really good quality.
Cybersecurity.
I don't think I've ever seen them have this good a quality. That was like such good quality there for a second.
Strategy, and it's a great honor and privilege to be able to be here, meeting with, of course, the Business Council of Canada. We have been working with our private sector partners and others in Canada for some time to develop the strategy. It's not the first.
Oh, here, let's just go to YouTube and watch anyways. It's kind of quiet on here. We'll just go over to YouTube and watch it here.
Good afternoon. Is it afternoon already?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are here today to release Canada's new national cyber security strategy. And it's a great honor and privilege to be able to be here, meeting with, of course, the Business Council of Canada. We have been working with our private sector partners and others in Canada for some time to develop the strategy. It's not the first. It's a continuation of investments and work and time in all of those things that touch the cybersecurity landscape. Obviously, there are three major facets to this strategy. The first is to help identify what the landscape looks like. What are these threats? Where are they coming from? How sophisticated are they? Are they here in Canada? Are they malign state actors? We have all heard of seniors, for example, being scammed on a regular basis, or we've seen bank frauds and these kinds of issues. So the first thing the strategy will do is help identify what the threat landscape looks like for cyber in Canada. The second thing this strategy will do is to help actually prepare Canada to respond. And we recognize we can't respond only as government. We have to do this in partnership with other orders of government, with the private sector, which is one of the reasons why we're meeting with a large cluster of private sector experts in this area to get their reaction to much of which they've contributed to already. And the third facet of the strategy is all about dealing with the magnitude of the challenge, forgive me, the opportunity inside Canada. We're dealing with hundreds of billions of dollars of economic activity and opportunity around the world today, which is going to more than double in the next 10 years. So we need to make sure that we are investing in our people, investing in our startups, investing in new opportunities, and keeping the jobs at home as Canada competes for and can win for positions and new technologies in the cybersecurity sphere. That's what the strategy is about in plain language. Donc, pour répéter, 3 éléments dans la stratégie. Premièrement, les gouvernements. Donc, voilà pourquoi on est là au Canada. OK, c'est positif selon moi. Whole of society challenge. Absolutely. Very short reference for this. Que c'est évidemment une question domestique et une question nord-américaine. Over here.
What's the timeline for appointing this fentanyl czar?
By the end of this week, we will have the terms of reference for this fentanyl czar finalized. I think you're going to be hearing very shortly afterwards.
But can Canada commit to appointing a fentanyl czar by the time this 30-day delay is up?
Absolutely. We intend to be way more proactive than that. We're moving forward now. We understand the constituent parts of the fentanyl crisis in Canada. The fentanyl czar's role will be to help us integrate what is a whole of society challenge. Right? Fentanyl is a foreign affairs issue. It's a law enforcement issue. It's an intelligence issue. It's a public health issue. It's a tracing issue in terms of the ingredients that end up being used in the production of fentanyl, the precursors. So this is a complicated issue, and we're also, to be clear, not going to shy away from raising with our American counterparts, as we have, that there are also drug challenges coming northward. And I've raised this openly, and I've spoken about 1,000 kilograms of cocaine recently seized by the Toronto Police and by the RCMP, I believe it was in Coutts, Alberta. We also know that methamphetamines are coming across the border. This is a two-way street. And the fentanyl crisis is particularly egregious because fentanyl is so lethal. It's lethal in Canada and it's lethal in the United States. And I made sure to remind White House officials that in some cases, some weeks, some days, on per capita population, we're losing more Canadians than Americans are losing Americans. That's an important stat for the Americans to understand. We are connected with this crisis. We will continue to participate together and jointly in wrestling it to the ground.
Okay, well, that might be it.
Maintenant, do I take everything coming from
more
the
English.
United States here?
Leader Justus says this is not really about fentanyl, that the tariffs are just a means to put economic force to Canada to turn us into a 51st state. Is that a threat that you think should be taken seriously at this point?
I think
So he's saying, do you think the tariffs are really about fentanyl, or do you think it's about something else?
To take everything coming from the United States seriously. I don't understand I think we should listen carefully to everything coming from the White House and act accordingly. But what we're really focused on right now, public safety. I'm here today with the president of the CBSA, the deputy commissioner of the RCMP, and my parliamentary secretary, Jennifer O'Connell. We're here to operationalize a border plan. We're putting into place measures which will strengthen the border, make it stronger than it already is. We're making huge progress, and there's more to be done. Over here.
Just on fentanyl, in regards to the cartel issue, just domestically, Canadian cartels, if you wish, are often organized crime groups involved in fentanyl, like the Hells Angels. put on Canada's list of terrorist entities, or are you talking about creating a separate list entirely?
We're talking about making reference explicitly to criminal cartels. We'll have more to say about that listing process and who's on that list in due course. Sorry. Last question.
Commissioner Duhem says that the RCMP has increased their personnel at the border by 35% compared to 3 weeks ago. But he says these aren't additional resources, they just move people around. So, and given that the force was already short, I'm wondering, can you assure Canadians their safety hasn't been put at risk to appease President Trump?
I have complete confidence in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police's ability to deploy the assets and the individuals we need at the border. I have complete confidence in their ability to follow up on their both contract policing and their federal policing responsibilities. And I take what Commissioner Duhem says at face value.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, that wasn't, I guess, just not much going on there for sure. But anyways.
So in recent years, the radical left has waged an all-out campaign to erase the very concept of biological sex and replace it with a militant transgender ideology.
This is all Canadian news, by the way, guys.
You heard a little bit about
I haven't played one American video today. This has all been Canadian stuff covering Trump.
this, haven't you, huh? Just a little bit?
Yeah, it was great.
Does anybody agree with them?
Well, we're watching Trudeau make an announcement at the big city mayor conference. I don't really want to watch the big city mayors. Honestly, I don't really care for it. But we'll watch Trudeau speak at 10 o'clock there. In the meantime, we're just going to go back to some mainstream news cycle, going over the two topics in the headline here.
Would be not a good thing to say yes right here. Female athletes have been forced onto the front lines, and men claiming to be girls have stolen more than 3,500 victories. That's a lot. And invaded more than 11,000 competitions designed for women. But all of that ends today because with this...
They had a transition there. Just so you know, there was a cut in his words there. Just so people know.
Executive order, the war on women's sports is over.
They cut his words again. Transition again, if you're just listening.
The Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women. So this will effectively end the attack on female athletes at public K-12 schools and virtually all U.S. colleges and universities. I don't think we've missed anything, but if we do, we'll make it up very quickly with an order. But Marco is going to make clear to the International Olympic Committees there, and he's going to make it as clear as anybody can make it, that America categorically rejects transgender lunacy. We want them to change everything having to do with the Olympics and having to do with this absolutely ridiculous subject that we even have to talk about this subject. If you went back 10 years or 15 years and you would move forward and listen to this.
Didn't I kind of just say this earlier?
Say, what the hell are they talking about? This is impossible. But you have people out there, Democrats, that are still totally in favor. They can't win the argument. They can't win a debate. They look like fools, and they continue to go on. And it's okay, because as long as they do this, and
a lot of people aren't like. There's a lot of people getting upset about him, and we're going to get into some stuff about Steve Bannon later. It's just like this drama reality TV that's unfolding right before us that actually is very serious at the same time. But you have to laugh, otherwise you're just going to go crazy, in my opinion.
Open borders and all of the other things they talk about, transgender everything. All they want to do is transgender and men playing in women's sports and all of these crazy things. And if they continue, I think we're going to end up ultimately, it's not going to matter because we're never going to go along with them and we're just going to keep winning elections, right, Mike? In Los Angeles in 2028, my administration will not stand by and...
Sorry, they had another cut there, another transition.
Watch men beat and batter female athletes, and we're just not going to let it happen, and it's going to end, and it's ending right now, and nobody's going to be able to do a damn thing about it because when I speak, we speak with authority. And for the same reason, just to make sure, I'm also directing our Secretary of Homeland Security to deny any and all visa applications made by men attempting to fraudulently enter the United States while identifying themselves as women athletes trying.
How marginal is that? How many people are actually doing that? Is that really a thing?
Get into the games, maybe where they are unable to get into the games. But the actions we're taking.
Yeah, there's another cut there. It's basically just like a 3 minutes of the highlights from this speech, which I'd rather just, this speech was yesterday, so I'd rather just do the highlights anyways.
Taken today are the latest in a sweeping effort to reclaim our culture and our laws from the radical left crusade against biological reality.
Donald Trump held another media avail today, as he has done every day this week, with the signing of executive orders coming fast and furious. This one was a bit different. CTV's Genevieve Boschman is in Washington today.
Yeah, honestly, what's changing it for me really was the tariffs. The tariffs for me made me kind of really pissed at him. I was like, I thought we were cool. What the fuck? Sorry, what the hell I meant. I was like, I thought we were cool. You know what I mean? Like what? Like, that's what changed. It started to change it for me. But honestly, at the end of the day, we need to hold everybody under a microscope, regardless how we feel about them or if we think they're a good choice. I think people we went through a really hard time recently, and people are feeling very demoralized and left behind, and like their leaders just didn't give a crap about them. And I think that people like Trump were able to bridge that, make that connection that the current leaders weren't able to make with the average people. And I think that's why he won the way he did. And I'm hoping that he just does what he said he was going to do, and that's it, which so far has been going on. But he also said he wasn't going to be as involved in foreign aid and foreign affairs, sorry. And now look what's happening with the Gaza stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? Taking over? What are you talking about? You said you weren't going to do that.
Jen, the U.S. president signed an order banning trans athletes from competing in women's sports, and he did it in a rather performative way. Fill us in.
Absolutely, Sandy. There were so many people in that room with him. Many of them, he said, are female athletes who've had to compete against what he says are men. And he said that this was going to stop. And that's why he was signing this executive order. Here's what President Donald Trump had to say.
All of that ends today because with this executive order, the war on women.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says if he's elected, he would mandate life sentences for those convicted of trafficking, production, and distribution of more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl.
Yeah. The whole thing with the Gaza stuff, the biggest thing I have with that is, like, you said you weren't going to get involved in foreign affairs, and now you're just getting involved in foreign affairs, calling yourself a peacemaker. It's like you're just doing the opposite of what you said you're going to do in some areas, not all areas. Some areas, like I agree with him on the immigration thing. I agree with him on the border stuff. I think that stuff was really needed, and he used that to kind of leverage his way to do all this other weird stuff he might end up doing, right? And I think that's just what politicians do, right? We can't forget Trump, Poilievre, all of them, politicians, right? Even Carney, even though he's a banker, he's a politician. So all politicians in my book.
We must stop drugs to save our people and put Canada first. It starts with locking up mass traffickers and manufacturers of this poison with penalties that fit the crime. But what is that crime? Let's call fentanyl trafficking what it is. Mass murder. Selling 40 milligrams of this poison is enough to kill 20 people. It's like spraying bullets into a crowd. You might not know who you're killing, but it's certain someone will die.
Poilievre also suggested there would be a 15-year sentence for traffickers convicted of selling fentanyl.
Honestly, I don't think anyone's, last note before we move on to this, I don't think anyone's against the executive order. I don't think anyone really, I think most people, there's a very fringe minority that are against this bill. I can tell you that right now. Like, there's, out of everyone I know, liberals, hosts on this show, there's very few people that are against that bill. So it's an easy win for Trump. That's all it was, really. And the fact that the idea that that's somehow Republican or right-wing ideology is just insane. It's just common sense.
Fentanyl in smaller quantities, between 20 and 40 milligrams. Justice Minister Arif Virani issued a statement reacting to Poilievre's proposal, saying his proposed solution isn't just extreme, it's completely detached from reality. It would sentence thousands of often struggling and desperate fentanyl users to life behind bars, regardless of their medical condition. An absurd, unconstitutional approach that has no place in Canada. Joining me now to help us better understand this proposal is criminologist with the University of the Fraser Valley, Yvonne Donderon. Sir, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Pierre Poilievre says he is targeting kingpins with this proposed legislation. The Justice Minister has a different interpretation. How do you view who is like?
Well, that's Arif Virani, the sponsor of Bill C-63, who has a problem with it. Shocker.
Get caught up in a law like this?
Well, it's not our first experience of that. You know, those mandatory prison sentences were very popular with conservatives during the Harper years. And we're trying to go back to this, but unfortunately,
What
those
do you mean?
measures were.
I thought you commit crimes, you get punished. What happened to that? What happened? Isn't it just? I thought it was that simple.
Ineffective then, and they will continue to be ineffective. Mr. Poilievre says that he's going after kingpins. Well, kingpins don't go around with 20 milligram of fentanyl in their pockets, or 40. Clearly, the people.
Yeah, that's Saul typing in the chat. By the way, I don't know enough about that particular issue to comment.
Are likely to be caught with that kind of quantity, minimum quantity of fentanyl around them in their person, in their possession, are going to be people who are in the lower rungs of criminal networks, people who are totally dispensable from the point of view of criminal operations, and oftentimes people who don't have a choice or people who are desperate and are trafficking at that level, low level.
Yeah, I thought you kind of sacrificed, like, I thought you lose rights after certain crimes are committed. Like, I'm all for that. I don't know about you guys, but like, to me, that makes sense. Like, you commit certain horrific high level crimes, you're gonna get, you know, like I just don't understand why that's a crazy thing to lose your rights if you're committing harsh crimes, in a sense. Like, I thought that's what going to prison meant, is you lose your right to freedom. You know what I mean? That's what I thought it meant.
To support their own habit. So in that sense, the Minister of Justice is right. I'm not sure to what point it's unconstitutional, but because I haven't heard this argument. But
you calling people in the chat dumbasses, Genghis? What an asshole, eh, guys?
Clearly, it's at the very least, it's ineffective.
Okay, I'll get to the constitutionality in just a second, but I want to ask you about that 40 milligram amount. Look, according to the DEA and other things I've seen today, 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be deadly. So 40 milligrams has the potential to kill 20 people. You know, it is not obviously a safe product. I've covered some drug busts in my career, and it's always kilos of a product that is taken in. How much is 40 milligrams of fentanyl relative to, you know, a normal fentanyl trafficking operation? Because I've seen arrests with much larger numbers. What do you make of that being the threshold for life in jail?
Well, the numbers we have in mind when we're talking about drugs don't apply to fentanyl, because fentanyl is extremely potent. So if you're talking about a gram of marijuana or cannabis, it's one thing. If you're talking about a gram of fentanyl, it's a very, very different thing. However, just to quote recent numbers, one of the big seizures that the law enforcement succeeded in accomplishing recently was 23 pounds, right? So what, 10 or 12 kilos or something like that.
Right.
And that was a mega seizure. So we're talking about very small quantities. However, oftentimes those drugs are mixed with others. So how you measure them, it's difficult because they're so potent. You need just a trace of fentanyl added to some other synthetic drug or any drug, and you have something very potent. So it's not as if people always go around with pure fentanyl in, you know, on their person or in their house or in their vehicle. So it's hard to know exactly.
Right.
What 40 milligrams. You're right, I think, David, in saying that most studies say, well, 2 milligrams is enough for an overdose. It's not automatic, but it's possible to overdose. Hopefully, people don't use 2 milligrams when they are using. Part of the problem oftentimes is the people who are using don't know exactly what they're using. It's been mixed, it's been tempered with. It's been added with others, offered with other substances. So it's hard for people to know what they're consuming. It will also be hard for police officers to measure whether you got 20 milligrams or 22 milligrams. And I can bet you people on the street are going to make sure that they have less than 20 or less than 40. Send two guys with 19 milligrams instead of one guy with 40. So, you know, it's a bit of a ludicrous kind of proposition, knowing how the market functions.
Right. It's interesting, though.
I get what he's saying is you're not going to have a scale on hand, but like from what I understand, if evidence is seized, it does get weighed in back at, you know, afterwards, does not? Like, I don't know. It just, to me, it seems like you would be able to figure that out at the exact weight. Like, I don't, you know what I mean?
You make the point that because of the potency, the smaller volumes matter more relative to other drugs and the conversation we normally associate with these things. But the life in prison as a minimum sentence, or as a mandatory sentence, excuse me, for if you're arrested with more than 40 milligrams, we have seen the Supreme Court strike down mandatory minimums before because they were too broadly applied, but left it open to the possibility that it could be applied if narrowly construed. Like there are mandatory minimums for murder and other different things in the Canadian Criminal Code. I wonder on this one, because Mr. Poilievre was asked today about the constitutionality of this.
Can you cast
and
your
he cited
video
sections.
in here?
Oh, yeah, Saul's in here now, guys. Yeah, turn your camera on when you can.
Yeah, I will, yeah.
1 sec.
7 of the Charter of Rights, which speaks to people's right to life and liberty, and said that because the Charter guarantees the right to life, this would be a Charter-compliant legal proposal. Your sense is that how this works?
Well, maybe in Mr. Poilievre's mind, but it's a stretch to say that. Of course, the right to life is threatened every day. You drive a car, you drink alcohol, whatever. All of those things can possibly interfere with your life, right? So it's not a very strong argument, but it's a popular argument. Probably that will be seen positively by a big segment of the population, but legally, I don't think that this is, is a strong leg to stand on legally.
So, I mean, also that section, also the right to liberty is there, right? And it collides, and this is why there is bail, for example, in Canada. So there's a collision of rights there. So just as a final point, do you think this would survive a court challenge? Because I suspect a mandatory life sentence would be challenged by civil liberties groups.
Well, judges absolutely hate those. The main reason for this is because it moves the discretionary authority from the sentencing judge to the prosecutors or the police, where there's a whole lot less oversight. So judges unanimously don't like those because they're powerless. They basically have to apply the sentence automatically. However, it depends, to answer your question directly, it depends on how this thing is formulated in the law. It is possible to have mandatory minima. As you mentioned, we have saved a few, but it depends on how this is formulated in the law. And basically now we have the benefit of previous court decisions. So if Mr. Poilievre was in power and directed the Ministry of Justice to draft something, I know that it would try to address the issues that have been already settled in the Supreme Court.
Right, and just for people watching at home, judges can give life sentences for trafficking of substances like fentanyl for that category and that class of drugs. They're just discretionary. They're not mandatory. Yvonne Donderon, thank you for joining us.
All right. Well, I wanted to get some extra information about that. I was curious. Before we get into the next video, we're going to go back over to CPAC now, because we do have Prime Minister Trudeau is going to be saying some words. And yeah, he's still the Prime Minister, guys. So we're going to see what he has to say. Oh, some new stuff on the list here. Ontario PC party. Oh, never mind. It's just some more Ontario election stuff. PM addresses. So we'll go to the big Sarah. So this will be the same feed. Trudeau should be making an announcement pretty soon. 10 o'clock.
Do you know what it's about?
Nope.
Yeah, we are at FCM. We are engaging with our members.
These are the big city. This is the big city mayor conference. We're just tuning into their live feed right now.
Municipalities, we're seeing
we're gonna get another cup of coffee,
strong
Saul.
sort of rising up of municipalities.
Okay, I'll
looking
wait
at
until you get
all
back.
of the
I get
different
some water.
ways that collectively, with their buying power, they are able to support Canadian
still there?
Canadian businesses, local economy. with a Buy Canada approach. And so on the sort of flip side is that we have to also recognize that retaliatory tariffs or any measures to sort of counter
semantics is like
these threats
essential in law.
need to be certain that municipalities remain whole, so to speak, with their budgets, because we know that municipalities are already running a very
bring up
tight
propaganda.
budget. There are the frontline services responding to
Genghis.
homelessness, responding to housing, infrastructure deficits, you name it. Food bank programs, everything is oversubscribed at the moment, and now layering on this economic instability. We're at FCM, of course, on behalf of all of our members, ensuring that we're at the table to negotiate.
Did any of you guys catch that
with the
Mr.
very strong
Sunshine Baby
partnerships
interview
that we have
he did
the
with
federal and
True
provincial
North?
governments to ensure that municipalities' priorities and their financial constraints are reflected and accounted for in whatever those outcomes look like. I think what we're really looking at right now, I mean, we have a broader advocacy priority, which is the municipal growth framework, which really does separate and long before these tariffs.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I didn't expect it to go that well, but yeah, it was. I'll talk about it more when Justus can pause the video. But yeah, it was really good.
Of revenue to municipalities in order to fund renewal of infrastructure to build communities that are able to thrive in the long term. That is already a priority. What we're talking about is ensuring that whether it's, as I say, local procurement or other strategies related to responding directly to the tariffs in those negotiations, that municipalities' best interests are at the foreground.
Back.
Yeah, hey, do you want to pause it for a second?
Yeah.
I was just saying to the chat, that interview I watched with Mr. Sunshine Baby, I was like really impressed. He says in the interview,
he did an interview?
that I guess he did an interview with True North. And I was expecting it to, I'm going to be honest, I didn't have very high expectations for it. I just watched it. And he says in the start of the interview that he kind of went a little hard over the weekend on Twitter, and he had somebody give him an Uncle Ben talk, is what he said. Like, great power comes with great responsibility. He's got a big platform and he should be using it responsibly.
One of the #1 Canadian political commentators. He has like 400 subscribers. It's crazy.
I was really impressed. I agreed with basically everything he said. I was like, this is like, where's this guy been? This is great. Like, I appreciate, I mean, obviously I'm not going to agree with this guy on policy stuff all the time, but it was just nice to see. It was very like, even something he said at the end actually made me rethink some of the way that I've been talking to people I disagree with. He was just saying, like, there's already a lot of the division in this country. We don't need to be like hitting at those fractures and making them worse. And it was just like really, it was a really good interview. I was really impressed. Yeah, like I hope
check it out.
Like, I hope it gets back. I feel bad because I feel like the very little activity I've had on the Grounded TV Twitter, I've kind of reply guide Mr. Sunshine Baby a few times. And looking back, I was like, you know what? I'm like, if he's going to be acting like I'm no problem with any of the stuff he said on there. So
he's like come on our stream a few times too and stuff. I always respected that because like, what do you have to gain? Like, especially when he first came in here, we had like 500 subscribers and we had maybe 20 people watching at once tops. And, and it was just like surprising to see him come in because it's like, what did you really have? He had nothing really to gain from it. So that's kind of why I always took it as like I respected him for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, and went over to the different feed for Trudeau's announcement.
I don't know. He talked too in the interview about how he did 9 years in the military. I didn't know that, and like I've got respect for that. And it was just very like he said multiple times in it that we need to like focus left and right, both be focused on like doing what's best for Canada. And she was talking about the 51st state thing, and I mean like, not 100% on how he was saying he thought it would go, but like he ended it just basically saying that's like a pipe dream anyways, and we should just focus on doing as good as like we want to have what America has. So we should focus on expanding our oil markets, making sure we diversify who we're selling to and stuff. And I was like, this is all like, I agree with all of this.
Yeah, it's not over yet, guys. It'll be coming back. It's just this CPAC. If you understand CPAC, they're just a mess.
Yeah, it was just about the U.S. Canada tariff situation, and it was a lot based on what I'd been seeing on Twitter. I wasn't expecting very much because he's been pretty unhinged on there too. But like clearly, this was in the past couple of days. Someone talked to him, and I don't know. I got a lot of respect for that he like took whoever was talking to him seriously, and was like, yeah, you're right. Like I have a big platform.
Well, yeah, it takes, they say it takes a lot of strength to admit one's faults or weaknesses in some way, right? Like it's not like a sign of weakness, in my opinion, to admit your faults or to have positions develop and evolve. That also means you're learning, right? If you look back 2 years
For sure,
ago
yeah,
and think
yeah.
like, hey, I can't believe I believed that, or I can't believe I was on board with that. It's like, well, that means you're probably learning, right? And maybe you've learned and whatever's led you down a path, you're like, no, actually, that's not the right way to go. I feel like this is more the right way to go.
I just wanted to say, like, I mean, obviously you people know that I'm not on the same page as Sunshine on most
Saul.
issues. Yeah, I mean, well, no, I mean, like, we've got a pretty conservative audience. I disagree with a lot of the people here, but I don't know. I endorse it. I would say if you stopped watching him, it seems like he's changed his tune quite a bit, and it's really. I would give him another chance for sure.
I was talking with one of our viewers about this, and he said he thought I was harsh about the stuff about the sovereignty claim, because I took that as like a huge thing of like, why would you just be like willing to throw out like your sovereignty? You know what I mean? Why would you be so on board with this, right? Like, why are you're angry that we don't want to jump on board too? Like, that's how I took it. But like he brought up a good point. It's like, if you're someone who considers yourself a true patriot, no matter what, you might eventually have a breaking point where you feel betrayed by your country, and that betrayal might feel more amplified, especially by former service members. Just because, they gave even more to this country than the average day citizen, and they were even betrayed. So now they're even more angry than your average day person might be. You know what I mean? And I think that's where, he does fit in that category. So I think it's fair to give him a bit of lenience. And also, I'm going to watch the interview when I can and go through it. Yeah, for sure, off stream, because I would like to see what he has to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he's going to go with the clickbait. Like, maybe he didn't make any announcements on there saying, yeah, I'm never doing clickbait titles again or whatever. But it's like, I don't know. The rhetoric was just a lot.
Is like, I don't
better
understand.
And more well thought out.
If you were, there's a difference between like sensationalizing and outright lying. You know what I mean? Like, outright lying is different. Like, angling a title in a way, like, there's some I've seen. Like, one was called the Pope, I think it's Pope Francis orders century-old portal conducts a ceremony to open a century-old closed portal beneath the Vatican. And in reality, and this article came out on Christmas, saying it was some weird ritual that the Pope was going to do on Christmas and open up a portal underneath the Vatican. And then you read the article, and the article is talking about more of a metaphorical social door to a non-profit group that's been around since the 20s. So it has been around for a century. They're referring to this as the portal. So it's like you construct it, and there's a rational, normal story there. But the title is like just way out there. To me, that's clickbait. You know what I mean? To me, that was clickbait. And obviously I didn't believe it at first. I was like, okay, there's no way the Pope's really opening a portal, but I'm curious to see the rationality here. So I'm going to click on it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't believe it, but I was like, I want to know, like, how is, like, where did, like, what is he gonna use a branch of holly and a reindeer for some weird ritual? Like, it's like
I remember there was one that really made me. It was Rebel News, and somebody had shared the headline of the story on Instagram, because they'll post on Instagram, and you have to like click through and actually go to read the article if you want to read the article. But a lot of people, they just share the headline with the picture, right? And the headline was like, infants or LGBTQ infants added to the DSM-5 or something. And I was like, and I look through, and they're talking about kids who are born with like intersex stuff. Like, that's what they're talking about. And I was like, this is not this is not the way you guys presented it,
Yeah,
that's the only mention in the whole document. But to be fair, Rebel News did link to the underlying material, which a lot of news sites don't do this. And I have noticed with Rebel News, they are very misleading with their titles, but they do usually link to the underlying where they got the information. So,
but yeah, that's kind of the same thing they're doing, right? Is they're just angling a title. Like, they're not really lying in a sense. They're just like hyper juiced up sensationalism. You know what I mean?
Being very hyperbolic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, but everybody's kind of doing it in this day and age. And I think it's because the algorithms.
It's the internet. Everybody's
Everybody's
competing for attention.
Well, that's the thing too, right? It's like it's more competitive than ever, and the algorithm, like people click on this stuff, right? People click on it. And not only do they click, they watch the whole thing, right? That's why it recommends it and favors people who do that, right? And like there obviously has to become a point where you have to have some integrity and be like, hey, well, I'm not going to just, to me, it's like, are you outright
Did you just
lying?
say integrity?
You know what I mean? Integrity is what I said.
I thought you said you have to have some integrity. I was like, okay, Justus.
Yeah. Anyways, but we're waiting for Trudeau's announcement to start here. It's taking longer than I thought. I guess I should have assumed he was going to be late again. Why am I shocked here? I don't know why, but I guess we'll.
Yeah, Rebel Media is a better name. Great Dominion. It's funny. A lot of people started watching Rebel News. I feel like over like 2020 and stuff. But I had known who they were back from 2016 when like Lauren Southern and everybody was still working for them. And they were, I can't remember if they were more unhinged or if they're just as unhinged still, but they're a little, they're out there.
I wouldn't call them unhinged. I would say like there's some articles where anyways, I'm not going to get into debate over Rebel News about this again. We have this conversation too many times.
Is a couple of days into U.S. President Donald Trump's 30-day tariff pause, but there's no sign yet of a permanent reprieve. So facing that threat, the feds are looking to shore up European trade alliances and break down interprovincial trade barriers. With us now for more on that is International Trade Minister Mary Ng. Hi, Minister. Good to have you back on the show. Thanks for making the time.
Always good to talk to you, Vashi.
In your view, Minister, is the threat of these tariffs from Donald Trump about the border, or is it about the trade relationship between our two countries?
Well, I think we have to take the president seriously about the borders, which we have, and very pleased that we have a bit of a reprieve on those tariffs. And I think with respect to tariffs, we're going to have to keep working very, very hard to try to ensure that they don't ever come into place here in Canada, because as I keep saying to the Americans, tariffs aren't good for us, but they certainly aren't good for the American consumers at all. So let's work together to try to find ways to deepen this economic relationship, and tariffs are not good for anyone.
Do you think it's a good idea to deepen the relationship between our two countries, given the unpredictability and uncertainty of the past few weeks with Donald Trump?
Well, the trade relationship with the United States is a really big one. We do over $1 trillion worth of trade. It is an important trading relationship, and I think it's important to ensure we do the work that
she's the Minister of International Trade.
We need to always do to keep access and preserve access to this market. But you're absolutely right, Vashi. I think Canadians are asking themselves, how is it that we are so dependent on one market? And I, as Canada's trade minister, as you well know, have been spending many, many years crisscrossing the globe, negotiating trade agreements on the one hand, but also ensuring that Canadian businesses are able to get access to those markets. In fact, I'm going to be in the European Union later this weekend, and I will be in some of our CPTPP partners next week with hundreds of businesses in Australia, in Singapore, and Brunei. So making sure that businesses, Canadian businesses, access those markets that the Canadian Free Trade Agreement network provides to them is something we must absolutely do to diversify.
And certainly I wouldn't take away from those efforts and access to different markets.
See, every time they say diversify, even though it makes sense in this sentence, it just sounds cringy. It's just like, you guys have ruined that word now.
Has increased, but at the same time, 75% of our exports still go to a single destination, and that is the United States. Do you expect that in order to escape the application of these tariffs in 30 days, we will have to make concessions in trade?
I don't think so. I think, and we don't know what that is, at the moment. I think what we need to do is to work with Canadians, as we have over, over many, many months, and certainly very intently over this last recent period of time. I think it's really terrific that Canadians are buying Canadian. I would encourage Canadians to keep doing that. But businesses that I talk to today are really asking themselves, what is it that they could be doing in terms of some of their suppliers that they might get at the moment from the United States? Might there be alternatives? I know that that work is not going to happen overnight, but I think that work has to, I think businesses rightly are asking themselves and examining that themselves, and we will be there to support them in that work.
I guess I would challenge you, though, on the idea that we don't know what concessions they might be looking for, because the president has spoken on numerous occasions pretty recently about the irritants as he views them in our trading relationship, and his advisors, too. I'm thinking, for example, of the User's Guide to Restructuring the Global Trading System, written just in November during the campaign from Stephen Moran, who's now nominated as the chair of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. So some pretty obvious things that he brings up, including, for example, the digital services tax, the DST, which is something
remember Saul was saying he didn't highlight. Apparently there's a clear list, and guess who's talking about it? Vashi Capello. So the liberal propagandist here is not making the liberals look very good.
President Biden also voiced much opposition to, and then also supply management. Let me start on the DST, Minister. Is that something you'd be willing to get rid of?
I think that I think that we should listen to to the issues that the Americans have as concerns, and I think that we should we should talk to them about whether or not there is something that we could be doing on.
Hey, how is Carney foreign interference, Kenzie? I'm sorry, but you lose me on that one. Was like Britain trying to meddle in our affairs? We're trying to go around the crown.
That front, DST being an example. I think it's work that we are going to have to do with the Americans.
Can I just ask you to clarify, does that mean that is something that you are willing to negotiate on? And I ask only because, like I said, I know your counterpart, Catherine Tai, your previous counterpart, I should say, Catherine Tai, has raised it with you previously. Your government said that it was sticking around. It actually was implemented, retroactive to, I believe, 2022, despite the opposition from the Biden administration. Is it now something you're willing to negotiate away?
Well, it was a commitment that we made to Canadians. And the commitment we made to Canadians, you might remember, is that everyone pays their fair share, including the big tech giants. And that's what that was all about. It was also in a time when we were negotiating a multilateral agreement through the OECD, where there is a general taxation for fairness at the OECD. So we were very much a part of those dialogues. But it was a commitment that we made to the Canadian people, and it's one that we kept. I think going forward, what we're going to do is, as you have seen us do of late, is really understand the issues that are prioritized and important for the Americans, and we need to enter into those conversations with a view of making sure that there are no tariffs placed on Canada.
I guess I'm still confused, though. I would interpret that as that's something that you're open to. And I just want to be clear, because this isn't nothing. This is something the president, for example, himself has launched a study on, extraterritorial taxation. He is willing, people around him say, to invoke a power that would allow him to double taxes on Canadian companies that are operating in the United States. So the consequences are quite significant.
Yeah.
Mary Ng, she was born in Hong Kong and she moved here when she was 14 or something. But she's got, like, I was listening when I was upstairs getting water, and she's got like a really thick Ontario accent. Like, she sounds very.
It's not about that. It's about where her family. It's the same thing with Michael Chong, right? It's like Michael Chong was born here, but he's got like grandparents.
Oh no!
I
was just saying,
right? Like, it's like that's how they can get implicated too.
It's crazy how people can move here, like even at 14, and like thick Ontario accent. That's what I hear. Like, she sounds like she's got a very just the way she says some words. She sounds like people I've met here that like you would never guess that she was from another country based on her voice. That's all I was trying to get at.
Well, as far as everyone's concerned, there's no open traders according to the Hogue Report in Parliament. So
Hong Kong's technically was and is a British colony too. She's born in 1968, so I think it's technically British Hong Kong. So she's probably a British citizen.
Yeah, it's 1968, yeah.
Yes or no, Minister, with great respect, is that something that you're no longer wedded to, the DST?
Well, I'm glad that you raised what the Americans are going to be doing in that one provision of the president's very comprehensive trade memoranda. And we are, too, doing the work here in Canada to understand that work that the Commerce Department and the USTR is going to be doing from now until April the 1st. There are many things that the president is looking at his departments to give him advice on before April the 1st, that being one of them. And we're going to do that work on this side as well. And I think it's just too early to say. I think we're going to do that work and see where and see what comes of it.
Okay, and Minister, on supply management, which is obviously a very, hotly contested political issue and has been for every political party and many different governments. Is there any possibility that you would move on the issue of supply management or grant Americans more access to the dairy market here?
Well, agriculture and the supply managed sector, of course, is really important to the Canadian economy. And when we renegotiated NAFTA, which is now CUSMA and USMCA and TMAC, supply management was very much negotiated as a part of a balance of negotiations in this trade agreement. And you'll remember at the very end,
I think like a lot of these liberals have broke ethics in some way. Like, what is the WE charity scandal? Like, every scandal every liberal's been involved in, has it not been because of ethics breaches? Like, you know what I mean?
With Trudeau specifically, has a lot of conflict of interest stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's almost
There's
like
a few. I think Randy Boissonnault, that was that one. Some of them are hard to, because it's like, I know people will say, but like if you have shares in an investment company that also has an investment in a company that gets money, that's such a far stretch.
You should
right?
not have any involvement in those contracts at all being established. And that was a problem with
if you had shares,
Randy,
sure,
right?
I agree.
He had his hand in every single cookie jar, right? Like it was just absolute corruption, in my opinion, with Randy for sure.
I'm not trying to excuse what they're saying. I'm just saying sometimes it's not quite as bad as it can be spun to be,
This agreement negotiated by President Trump was touted as one that worked for the Americans, worked for Canadians, and worked for Mexicans. Supply management was very much a part of those negotiations on a balance
Trump's working with the WEF now too, so
of a whole bunch of things that went into those negotiations. And with respect to supply management, I would also say that the Americans absolutely have taken advantage of the dispute settlement system that is a part of our trade agreement. And I would like to remind your viewers that the dispute settlement panel in that particular instance actually ruled in Canada's favor, which is that we are living up to our obligations in the trade agreement, particularly around dairy in that case.
So for people, for example, who have a stake in the dairy industry, supply, farmers, for example, in Quebec, your message to them tonight is you're not going to concede on supply management.
Yeah, correct. I don't think Elon Musk is the best person to be looking into those things.
And finally, I wanted to ask you about one other thing when it comes to
conflict of interest.
Trade.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because they're talking about the Doge thing in chat, and Elon Musk, he receives funding from some of those grants, right? And he also, those grants go to some of his competitors. Like, it's a huge conflict of interest for him to be involved in that at all. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know much about that whole DOGE thing. Saul's been following that a lot closer than I have.
Around, in particular, something a number of your cabinet colleagues have talked about lately, which is a sort of newfound support for the idea of building pipelines where it didn't exist before, for getting our oil, 95% of which goes to the United States, to other markets. Are you supportive of that, and do you regret not being supportive of it earlier?
I think that what we are all thinking about right now is what Canada needs to look like, what our economy needs to look like into the future. I think we're asking the question around the high dependency to one particular market, and the fact that with Canada's trade agreements giving us access to 65% of the world's economy, how it is that we might be able to diversify in a way that really protects Canadian jobs and is good for the Canadian economy. Trade infrastructure, for sure, I think has been brought up as an opportunity for us as Canadians. So I think that we should be looking at those very things and those very infrastructure things that are going to be important for Canada and for how they can enable our diversification into the future to the betterment of the Canadian economy.
But as Minister of International Trade, why weren't you thinking about that before?
We've been absolutely focused on.
This is what I'm saying. It's like, how is she a liberal propagandist, guys?
Oh,
making sure
leave
that
them
there
alone.
are broad access markets for Canadian businesses around the world.
I agree, though.
And we have succeeded. I mean, we succeeded in
but for oil, but for oil and gas in particular, you've got TMX and you've got LNG Canada, the initial site. But beyond that, there's been a lot of stuff that hasn't gone forward.
Well, there's a lot of things that we have to export and to grow. I take a gazillion, well, maybe not a gazillion, but I take many clean technology companies.
Hey, Jose.
companies and clean energy companies abroad. We are developing nuclear capabilities and selling that to places like Romania and to Poland and setting up infrastructure in Southeast Asia. So absolutely we are selling and wanting to export more energy, and there are many other sources of clean energy that we have certainly been promoting and selling and wanting to sell more around the world. Hydrogen, blue hydrogen.
Okay, I have to leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I know your time is limited too. I appreciate you making the time for the conversation this evening. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, but if you're not going to trust a big institution because they pay for everything, you might as well just not shop at a grocery store. Might as well not do like anything. Might as well not have a cell phone. You want to avoid institutions? Good luck. Like go live in. You need to go live as a hermit, basically, in the forest.
Just take them at what they're saying, and if you don't trust something, go look into it yourself if you really want to, right? Like, and you got to just rely on people's credibility that they build up over time too. If Vashi was coming on here
today, is relying on the credibility of this government is a little bit of a tall order.
No, not credibility of the government. I don't think that's what. No, I just mean for media figures, right? If you see her and she's making false claims all the time and she's not asking tough questions where those are available to her, then I mean, yeah, maybe question where her allegiances lie. But I haven't seen her do anybody any favors. Like, and she could be, it would be advantageous to her to have a good relationship with these people, right? Like if they don't want to come onto the show, then she's not going to be able to have a show anymore.
Yeah, like
so
your whole argument is just like who pays the bills. Like that, it's just like that's not like.
And CTV probably gets a lot of their funding from advertising.
What news is profitable nowadays without lying to people? You know what I mean? Like subsidizing actually can be helpful in certain situations. If Poilievre was subsidizing them, you wouldn't be saying that. You're only saying that because you don't like the Liberals and Trudeau, right?
It's more than that. The reason you want to have these places maybe have a little bit of subsidization is because, yeah, you can say that they're getting funding from the government, they're relying on that individual government, but the hope would be that the government, regardless of who's in power, will continue to fund these places so that they don't have to rely on outside money, right? Because you don't necessarily, where do you want these conflicts of interest to be coming from? From a stable government fund that funds them no matter what? Or do you want it coming from advertisers who are flaky and might back away from a journalist who they don't agree with or has controversial opinions or something, right? Like ad revenue can just be just as corrupting as a political influence could be, in my opinion. Like everybody's kind of prone to these weaknesses. You just kind of got to listen to what they're saying. And if they lose credibility over time, don't believe them.
Anyways, all I was trying to say is with this whole thing, it's just like, I don't know, like if they didn't get any subsidies, then they'd be more incentivized for clickbait and for just lying to you. You know what I mean? Like that will make them more money. You know what I mean? In the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just getting paid by the government isn't necessarily like, I mean, the police get paid by the government, right? But I mean, they're not like beholden to any particular politician. You would just hope that the police are going to be funded regardless of who's in power, right? You don't want them to have to be allegiant to one political entity in particular, right?
Minister.
Great. Thanks so much, Vashi.
Anyways, hopefully Trudeau is actually on time now. He's still not there. What? Oh, it's over. Never mind. It's over now. So he showed up.
It was just very short.
Shortly. Begin shortly. There we go. Look at CPAC here. What is this?
I thought this.
That's how high budget CPAC is, guys.
Corporate influence can be fascism. Like in the RT Russia Times, they get orders from the Kremlin on what to report on and what they're not allowed to report on, right? And if we found some back communication where Justin Trudeau is telling the CBC, hey, don't report on my We Charity scandal, and they weren't doing it, or
I think that was going on with the CBC.
Don't mention anything.
Don't get me wrong. I think that was going on with the CBC specifically. But that's
Which,
more
what
because
do you
of the
think they were not
relationship
reporting
that he
on?
had with well, when it came to a lot of the scandals, there's a lot of stuff. There was something the other day they weren't reporting on. I said it was a big deal, and I made a comment about it on stream. And I was like, why aren't they talking about this? This is a big deal. And it took them a few days to acknowledge it. And more, maybe they were just doing work, and I can't remember exactly what topic it was. But CBC specifically, just because of just from what I've seen in the pattern. Like you said, like they eventually just lose your trust. That's what CBC has done for me, right? I've lost complete trust in pretty much everybody at CBC. When it comes down to like CTV though, like from what I've seen, you know, reacting to all these power plays in the last like 6 months, like I don't feel like CTV is owned by anyone but themselves, really. They seem to attack everybody. There's certain things they won't report on, but that could also be seen as more of their avoiding taboo topics in a sense, right? I don't know. Like you take that with what you will, but like it's nothing major. Like there was things they've reported on that CBC doesn't touch right away. So anyways.
I had something I wanted to say. I forgot.
All right, Trudy, what's going on? What are you doing here, buddy? No audio. He's supposed to give a few words.
Oh, I was going to talk about like the difference between breaking a promise and just straight up lying.
Well, this is starting.
This is starting. Yeah, I'll talk about it later.
Thank you for taking the time to join us.
That's so quiet.
Critical
what is wrong with them?
Time for our country. We always appreciate the time that you give this caucus.
They should allow. I actually sent the CBC an email one time saying you guys should really open up your comments. I think it would add a layer of credibility to, because you've lost a lot of trust, and I think this would be a way to kind of earn some of that back.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour. Josh, thank you for welcoming. Carole, thank you for your leadership as well. But all of you around the table, thank you for being here.
Nice. Then that happens. Okay.
Those who were just elected.
Just give me a sec, guys. Just going to go to their YouTube channel.
Here, one sec.
I just don't seem to get... They're a mess over there.
I always appreciate the time that you give this caucus.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour. Josh, thank you for welcoming. Carole, thank you for your leadership as well. But all of you around the table, thank you for being here, particularly highlighting those who were just elected last year, Cynthia in Saskatoon, Chad in Regina, Andy in Halifax. Welcome to this. I've been coming to Big City Mayor Caucus for 10, 11 years now, and this is a really, really important forum for leadership that is truly national. The impact that the big city mayors have on the lives of Canadians in so many ways cannot be overstated, and the opportunity to sit down with you is a foundational responsibility for any prime minister.
Yeah, dude, Trudeau's like the biggest pick-me girl ever, Genghis. He just loves the attention. He'll never go away. Even after he's not prime minister anymore, he'll still trying to be getting the spotlight.
To have spent as much time as we have doing really important work. Thank you for the critical work you do to deliver for Canadians day in and day out. Everything from keeping our streets safe to providing services like transit everyone depends on, to turn housing units into homes and neighborhoods into communities. But beyond that, thank you for being vital, irreplaceable partners, particularly at this challenging moment for our country. As I announced on Monday, we've reached an agreement with President Trump on border cooperation and security.
Good afternoon, Denny. He's just the definition of a soy boy. Is that what it is?
An agreement that pauses tariffs for the next month, all while... Thank you.
It's a smile. Look at the smile. What is that?
Of course,
smile?
we will and have committed to jointly tackling the scourge that is fentanyl through the launch of a Canada-U.S. joint strike force, through the appointment of a fentanyl SAR here in Canada, but also through the continued implementation of our ambitious $1.3 billion border plan.
Yeah, and Saul sent me a meme, and it was like Davis from Corner Gas was the new fentanyl SAR. You know, you guys ever watch Corner Gas? And like he's just napping all the time, you know?
And I know, because we've had this conversation.
Oh, Kane's a soy man. Sorry. Reminds me of Zoolander, where he's like, merman, merman.
On this table many times over the past years, we agree wholeheartedly with our American neighbors that fentanyl must be wiped from the face of the earth. That those heartless individuals who traffic this deadly drug, who cynically profit off the pain and suffering of countless Canadians and Americans, must be severely punished. So this is positive, and it is progress. But at the same time, Our work does not take proposed tariffs completely off the table. That's why over the coming month, Team Canada will be stepping up. With the help of our Council on Canada-U.S. Relations, with Canada's premiers, Canadian businesses, Canadian unions, Canadian civil society, Indigenous leaders, and crucially, with the help of all of you, Canada's mayors and municipal leaders. We will be engaging closely with the U.S. administration to underscore why tariffs hurt us all and explain that the better path forward for our two countries, the only path for the United States to usher in the new golden age that President Trump desires, is to partner with Canada, not to punish us. But we're doing more than just bracing ourselves. We're convening provincial and territorial leaders to do the vital work of breaking down the barriers that hamper interprovincial trade, trimming unnecessary red tape that is constraining our economic growth and holding Canada back from reaching its full potential. En même temps, il ne faut pas oublier que nos liens commerciaux avec le reste du monde sont énormément qui nous attendent avec l'Équateur, with the leaders of tariffs, would decide whether you are the ones who built relationships with the leaders of America's largest cities who understand the importance of working together. You are the ones who decide whether your lucrative procurement contract goes to a firm in Moose Jaw or Montana. You are the ones who put local diplomacy in action, making it clear that Canada is a friend and an ally and that tariffs would harm American cities.
Dude, he's clearly got a new speechwriter, eh?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. People were making jokes about him, how he's just gotten better since he decided to quit. And it's just like saying how you're like just hating your job, and then you finally handle your 2 weeks. You're just like doing a better job at the last 2 weeks. But I don't know. It's still not good enough in my opinion. Like he's just
no, of course not.
This face.
Dude, he's so disingenuous. I'm just really not a Trudeau fan.
I don't think anybody is.
Yeah.
Even like his most diehard fans, like someone I know, just like, he's not that bad. I know he's made a lot of mistakes. And I started bringing up the scandal, the W Charity scandal and SNC Lavalin and stuff. And they're just like, well, you can't believe everything you see on the TV. And that's what she said.
Yeah,
to
it's
me.
okay.
Like, all right.
Okay. Some MAGA logic.
Shows how aware you are. Oh.
Pour parler de l'importance du commerce interprovincial pour vos économies locales, leur rappeler l'importance de créer de nouvelles opportunités et de bons emplois pour les résidents de vos villes. And you are the ones closest to your communities. You know your local industries and your local business owners.
Yeah, exactly,
and that's
Melissa.
Vital knowledge for selling Canadian.
And now they're fighting over the wheel. Now that they've all woken up, instead of actually driving, they're just fighting over the wheel.
Resources, goods, and services, selling Canada to the rest of the world. You are indispensable members of Team Canada.
Trudeau doesn't even like
Well,
Trudeau.
liberals were never supposed to be appealing to lefties, right? So that's, I think, their biggest mistake.
The proposed tariffs from the United States. Canadians have shown just how much we love this great country of ours. We've shown that when our backs are up against the wall, we will all stand together for Canada.
Oh my God.
We will choose Canada. Over the next few weeks, we will need to keep that spirit up because we're not out of the woods yet. Because we don't just want to get through this challenging moment, we want to emerge from it stronger than ever before. And that starts, of course, with all of you leading Canadian municipalities.
It starts with you reconvening Parliament, dumbass. Like, this is so stupid. Like, it's just like why are you proroguing?
This is what I mean,
still?
though.
Like, why are you proroguing still? Like, it's like Jagmeet Singh pretty much isn't going to vote you out at this point. I'm convinced. So you have nothing really to worry about at this point. You'll be able to walk right back in and continue this train wreck of a prime ministership you have. What do you want to say, Saul? Anything?
I can't remember now.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Thank you all very much.
Anyways, that was just, I don't know what the point of that was, really. Honestly, that was uneventful.
Yeah, the last thing I want is Alberta joining the U.S., cut BC off from the rest of Canada. No, thank you.
Canada continued to debate safety at the border. RCMP are highlighting 3 separate incidences at the border here in Alberta and Manitoba. Mounties claim the Wednesday news conference has nothing to do with politics.
To anyone who is thinking about crossing the border, don't.
RCMP say just
Do
this
not
Tuesday.
come.
Yeah, nothing to do with politics here, guys. Move along.
Tuesday, an American national illegally crossed through the Coots border crossing in Alberta, leading Mounties on a high-speed chase through the Lethbridge area.
A tire deflation device was successfully used by the RCMP south of Mill River, and the vehicle came to a stop. The male then fled on foot and was pursued by RCMP police dog services and other RCMP officers.
Police say that chase ended with the man shooting himself and dying. Earlier
Jesus.
this week,
Okay.
RCMP again at the Coots, Alberta border, arresting these 9 people crossing on foot with suitcases, including 5 children. Last month, Manitoba RCMP stopping
Jeez.
6 people from crossing the
Like,
border.
this is January, right? Like, that's messed up to crossing that border this time of year. Like, that's like -30, -40 at night sometimes, isn't it?
On foot using thermal imaging from an RCMP plane. The 9 people at Coots and 6 in Manitoba were from various countries in South and Central America, as well as Africa. Security concerns at the U.S.-Canada border have been heightened in the midst of threatened tariffs from the United States, which President Donald Trump has said is because of the flow of illegal drugs from Canada. Wednesday, RCMP insisted their press conference celebrating border efforts has nothing to do with tariff talk.
I think we have 3 incidents today. As you can imagine, we also wanted to show, because I think sometimes in the RCMP, we have a lot of different things that we're doing out there, and so many things happen, and the world is very dynamic, and we're trying to get out as much information as we could. And the unfortunate incident that obviously happened yesterday, we thought it was important to get out here today.
On border security, following a First Minister's meeting in Ottawa, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she's looking forward to seeing new federal efforts to beef up border security, including the appointment of a fentanyl czar in Canada. Adding
Every time I hear that now, I just think of Davis from Corner Gas, like napping, drinking coffee, like
fentanyl czar.
Part quote, as a province, in addition to the border security measures already taken, I have instructed my government to take immediate steps to significantly increase police and prosecutorial resources to go after the fentanyl labs, kingpins, and dealers that are responsible for killing 49,000 Canadians since 2016. Reporting from Edmonton, Darcy Ropchan, City News.
Yeah, that was just an interesting story to throw in there.
The leader of the federal
Hey, Pork Chop, welcome back, buddy.
Conservatives says if he's elected as prime minister, his conservative government would impose mandatory life sentences for anyone caught producing, distributing, or trafficking more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl.
Selling 40 milligrams of this poison is enough to kill 20 people. It's like spraying bullets into a crowd. You might not know who you're killing, but it's certain someone will die.
During an announcement in Vancouver Wednesday, Pierre Poilievre said a mandatory life sentence would crack down on organized crime superlabs, like the one uncovered by Mounties last year in BC's interior, which led to the seizure of enough fentanyl and precursor to kill every Canadian twice.
This penalty that I propose is proportionate to the crime. If you kill dozens of people, you should go away for life.
The Public Health Agency of Canada says from January 2016 to June 2024, more than 49,000 people died from an opioid overdose, with fentanyl involved in most of those deaths. One public policy professor says Poilievre's announcement may sound like a good approach, but research shows drug law enforcement doesn't work.
Well, there's countries that are doing it, taking a pretty harsh approach, and it's working. According to the records, right? Maybe they're just people are getting better at not getting caught, right? I don't know. I just think it's like there's certain crimes I feel like we used to have pretty harsh punishments for, like stuff like this, and you would go to jail for 20 plus years at the minimum, right? It wasn't not just, it doesn't need to be life, and 20 plus years is also a very substantial amount of time. But there's obviously certain people I feel like that just should never get out, right? Like people, like some of Canada's most horrific criminals should never see the light of day, in my opinion. Like, that's what's so crazy about this whole thing. And I understand the definition of kingpin is what they're arguing about from this recent statement, right?
idea that we can have more law enforcement, or somehow if we put more money into the drug war that we're going to win, or we're going to be able to eliminate the supply of toxic drugs, is just not borne out by evidence and the history that we've seen in the past.
There's been renewed focus on fentanyl as U.S. President Donald Trump threatens tariffs on Canada and Mexico because he believes both countries are failing to keep the synthetic opioid from entering the U.S. The Liberal government promised several changes.
And it's not just that. Even Vashi was saying he's actually highlighted several concerns that he wants addressed. I don't know if you know that, Saul, but apparently there's actually a list of demands he has. So I know there might not have been at first, but he's actually highlighted. Yeah, apparently there actually is a list.
When did that happen?
I don't know, but Vashi was talking about it in the interview with Mary Ng from last night.
This week,
is it the one that was on the initial tariff demands?
I don't think so, no.
Because that was very vague.
It should not take a foreign leader to get the Liberals to wake up to the drug crisis that they have caused here at home.
Mandatory minimum sentences have been challenged over the years, with the Supreme Court of Canada ruling them unconstitutional in some cases. In Vancouver, Monica Gould, City News.
Monica Gould. It's funny because everyone was calling Karina Gould as a joke, and I thought it was funny that her last name is actually Gould. So this is from last night. I thought it'd be interesting to see Justin Trudeau talk at Black History Month, guys. You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Happy, wonderful, and driving joy.
Let's get past her. All right, just as annoying and fast forward.
400 and of course, social, health, and under his vision.
Commanda pour ces beaux mots et à Kevin Aqua pour l'interprétation de notre hymne national. C'est avec tellement un grand plaisir que je me joins à vous ce soir, que je me joins aussi à tous nos collègues, particulièrement Marcy Ian, Kamal Kara, Ariel Kayabaga, et à vous tous pour souligner l'histoire, l'héritage et le leadership des communautés noires du Canada. Et il y a tellement à célébrer pour tous les Canadiens.
I'd imagine Greg Ferguson would be there, but he'd be avoiding the camera after all the recent things that happened. Remember that whole ad scandal with him? Imagine he'd be avoiding the camera.
D'aspects de notre société, que ce soit le docteur Dominique Gaspard qui le Lincoln à la prise de congé, Edgar Jean qui leur revient. You here in this room, you know of all the incredible achievements and hardships of Black Canadians in our history.
You know, Saul was talking about this yesterday, how Trudeau's probably that one white guy, like a barbecue, going around with the only black guys, being like, you know, I voted for Obama, right? Like, you know, like the whole thing.
I was saying, I was comparing him to the Get Out dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's still not the case for most Canadians. Many of us have long believed in an incomplete version of our history. That's why we need your voices, your advice, your ideas, to keep our leaders accountable, to make sure everyone's idea of Canada includes all Canadians. Because to build a better future for all Canadians, we must learn from our history. We must recognize historical and ongoing discrimination. For years, the Canadian government itself was a source of discrimination. Canadian authorities spread disinformation intended to discourage black immigration. Railway companies made black immigrants
thank God he didn't wear his Halloween costume from how many decades ago.
pay a full fare.
He just shows up to Black History Month. Oh my God.
That's Genghis said it. He should have dressed up for Black History Month. That's kind of what I took.
Yeah, and like the fake thing in his pants too. Oh my God, man.
Jeez.
So
Instead
brutal.
of the reduced rate they were entitled to as settlers, and there were even attempts to outright ban their immigration, attempts that thankfully failed. I'm talking about history, but you in this room know that discrimination is unfortunately all too often still a lived reality in our country. So I'm glad to see more and more Canadians becoming aware of that, aware of anti-black racism, of systemic discrimination.
Of anti-black racism? What would that just be racism? Is that like, are there new additional labels for types of racism now? Like you have to label
specific, right?
Different categories of racism as well as, you know what I mean? Now,
You don't think that there's a little bit of a difference between like anti-Semitic racism and
so
anti-black
we're wasting
racism?
our time. We're wasting our time. It's racism, period. It's just, we're wasting our time with it. I feel like,
I don't know. I just
it's like a secondary label. It's like, what?
Yeah, you're just being particular about what you're talking about. It's probably not necessary in this context. I mean, I think they know what he's talking about here, but
your work here in this room, and thank you recent movements like Black Lives Matter. See, I deeply love Canada, but love requires
Trudeau loves you guys. He loves you.
Honesty. If you love someone, you tell them when they mess up, because you know they can do better and they can be better. Once we recognize that Canada has played a role in discrimination, we must also recognize that Canada, therefore, has a duty to right historical wrongs and fight ongoing discrimination. You see, our government has always taken that responsibility seriously, and we've taken action. But that wouldn't have been possible without all of you. It's by relying...
I thought he was going to say, I love black people. That's all he was going to say. It's like Holden RFK Jr. I love the blacks. Like,
yeah.
On your knowledge and your expertise that we developed Canada's first Black Justice strategy to tackle racism and discrimination within our justice system. C'est en étant à votre écoute, à l'écoute de ceux qui connaissent les vrais besoins de près avec les sujets par les communautés. Vous avez... Yes, those are all parts of our government's record, but above all, that is your record as a black community that stepped up, that pushed for change, and that delivered it, not just through this government, but right across the country.
Is that what BBC stands for? Big Black Community?
And of course, as we all know, there's so much more work to be done. As such, Canada is proud to co-sponsor the second International Decade for People of African Descent, which will give us more opportunities to celebrate the heritage, cultures, and achievements of people of African descent, and to think about everything that still needs to be achieved to put an end to racism and discrimination. I have to admit, my friends, I'm a little bit emotional tonight. One of the things...
Just have butterflies.
That comes with knowing that you're on a countdown clock to your last day means you get to be really ruthless about the things you want to do and the things that you don't want to do. And let me tell you, if I am here tonight with you all, it's because, man, oh man, did I want to see you guys to celebrate one last Black History Month as Prime Minister.
Man, oh man, what?
And the things that you don't want to do. And let me tell you, if I am here tonight with you all, it's because, man, oh man, did I want to see you guys to celebrate one last.
Yeah, I bet you he feels like the white Obama here. He's just like, what?
That's what he was initially.
Like, what's wrong with him?
Marketed himself as it, right? Like Canadian Obama.
Black History
I think he does a really
Month
bad job of mimicking
Minister.
the speech pattern.
It has been the honor and the pleasure of my life to work alongside you, to be there with you, to learn from you, to grow with you, and to count especially on incredible Black MPs and Black members of staff and team who have been incredible in being voices for this community.
Like, it's just like you almost don't believe it. It's like, you're doing such a good job. Like, it's just like so over the top. It's like, dude, chill out, man. Like why don't you just say, yeah, really happy with you guys. Like, what is this? It's like this drama performance. Like, look at this face right now. Like, look at this face. You know what I mean? Like, what is this performance he's putting on?
Community from coast to coast to coast, lifting you up and making sure this government did better. My God, the privilege that I've had of serving these past 9.5 years, serving all Canadians, but particularly serving this community, is one that I will never, ever forget. It has been the joy of my life. It has been a deep privilege to
It's been the joy of his life.
Call you all friends.
This is how you recover from blackface
Maybe he knows.
scandals,
Maybe
guys.
he's really.
This is what you do when you're caught in a blackface. You go to
They're into it. Maybe these are his buddies. I don't. Who knows? Maybe he comes here all the time.
Oh god, just go to the crowd. It's like half. It's like majority white people. There's like a few black. It's just like a lip. Sorry, my sense of humor might be a little twisted.
And to recognize that there is still so much work for you all to do. Because I'm going to be on a beach somewhere, right?
What was that
I'll
smile? What is that?
And I'm going to be on a beach somewhere, right?
What is this face? He does this. Is this like a French thing? Is this normal? Like, what is this?
This is the real Trudeau coming through right here. That's what I mean. This is who he really is.
What is this? Like, I can't.
He's got to let his inner goofball out. You know, he gets to. Now he's not going to be the leader of the country anymore.
No, I'll still be around, but there is.
He's just a
work
goofy
to
guy.
do to continue to raise each other up, to
It's a lizard thing.
make sure Canadians see each other, truly see the extraordinary, rich diversity of this country. Not take for granted that diversity makes us stronger, but knows that every single day we have to stand up for it, we have to fight for it, we have to remember what's worth fighting for. That's something that all Canadians should strive for, because when we help our fellow Canadians reach their full potential, we all benefit. When black businesses succeed, our whole country succeeds. When black organizations succeed, our communities become stronger. When we empower black...
It's funny because even in Western Canada, there's not a large black population. In Toronto,
There is in Ontario, though.
Yeah, there is in Canada as a whole. But if you go to like BC, Western Canada, there's not really. So this just seems it's kind of funny to a degree, but I don't know. Like I don't feel more successful because other people of a different skin color are doing great across the country. Like I don't feel more successful because of that. So.
Black youth, our future becomes brighter for everyone. When black Canadians succeed, Canada succeeds. That's what brings us together tonight, my friends, and that's why we can be so optimistic about the future we will continue to build together. Happy Black History Month. Bon mois de l'histoire des Noirs. Thank you all. Merci, mes chers amis.
Yeah, it's just like a weird thing to do to focus so much on race, whether or not you think it's for a good reason or not. It's just weird, in my opinion. It's not really productive, especially in this day and age. Like we're so integrated now. It's just like it seems out of date. Honestly,
no, Steve Bannon. What are we watching?
I don't know.
Canada's greatest defense is about to become your softest underbelly. The north of Canada, that open border with whatever climate changes, but the beginning of the Northwest Passage, but more importantly, China and Russia, the great powers, and the United States.
This is kind of a wild thing to say, but I was watching him the other day. I was watching an interview with him. Does he kind of look like an auntie we have? Am I? Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
No? Okay. So I'm gonna send you a message. No, you don't know who I'm talking about. I'm just completely.
No
if you put a pair of
clue who
glasses
you're
on
talking
him.
about. I do not know who
Okay.
you're talking about.
All right. Okay. All right. Maybe it's just in my head then.
Get out over the Arctic with the vast resources of the Arctic is going to be the new great game of the 21st century. Canada, you are thrust into the middle of that, and quite frankly,
I messaged
you
you.
are the greatest. I don't know if target or prize. You're like asking you're the great prize of that. That as you awaken, and the geoeconomically, he's saying, hey, the United States market's so lucrative, you're going to have to pay a premium to get through the golden door, right? Canada could be all part of that. The geoeconomics of North America combined, and the geostrategic interest of North America combined, and particularly hemispheric defense, all the way from Argentina and Brazil under Bolsonaro, all the way up to the Canadian Arctic.
He definitely looks like he could be one of our
the first
uncles,
half of the 21st century.
He's in that family.
Trump
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that maybe.
is laying this out in a very sophisticated way, and avant-garde thinkers strategically and economically are coming and say, this guy's onto something. Listen, this is the golden market, right? You're going to pay a toll to get access to the United States. You're either going to have to shift your manufacturing here.
Nah, she's just a tough broad, Great Dominion.
Or you're going to pay a premium. And this is not a 25% toll tariff punitive on an avocado coming from Mexico or from a part made in Ontario that comes into Detroit under the hood into an engine. This is something much deeper, right? It's much deeper that he's going to look at some sort of tariff, trade, and duties to have external revenue in the United States. Now, if you're part of that,
Great Dominion. No, my auntie did not start off as an uncle.
Talking about,
I don't know. I see a facial similarity. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's something about the head shape. We all got giant heads in our family, so.
State or agreeing with the state, then you're inside the golden door. The compelling logic of the 21st century, geostrategically and geoeconomically, is going to make this at least something that Canadian people have to.
I don't know, Kenzie. Kids were pretty racist when I was a kid. Like, it was pretty wild.
We were pretty.
When I think back
I was
to
way more
elementary school age
in high school than I. We thought it was funny.
Yeah, I'm not saying I was racist. I'm saying
ethnic backgrounds, and we were calling each other racial slurs, thinking we were funny.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
For a couple of 100 years, you've been part of what was once the greatest empire on earth. You're still one of the Dominion countries. It's just times change, things change, geostrategically it changes, and now you're going to have a rethink. It has nothing to do with the obsession of our revolutionary generation and our framers to militarily invade Canada 3 times, 3 failures of my day, 0 for 3. Has nothing to do with that. But I think, and look, people here love Canadians.
My schools weren't like that because it was all white people where we were, but I heard of stuff like that for sure.
Yeah, me and Saul went to the same school, but I don't know what you're talking about, Saul. Like, dude, what are you talking? We went to the same school. It was not like there was a huge...
Was there race wars? Was there enough people for there to be race wars at the school?
There was a lot of, like, you know, kids, like, you know, Asian kids.
It's
a lot of kids.
It was a mixed bag.
A lot of East Indian kids.
Sure.
A lot of China, like a lot of Asian kids in general. Like,
yeah, but like, there's some places like in Abbotsford and stuff, like it's literally like half and half. Like there's like a lot of Indian kids there.
I've never seen racism so prominent until I moved to northern BC, and then I see it just so bad. Like when it comes to the native populations, it's horrible. Like people here are just openly racist all the time, and I just like okay, just like awkwardly walk away. And it's like normal for people my age to have like super like next level racist parents, like 80, like you know how like you know like traditionally like I think to like my wife's, you know, great grandmother, you know, she's almost 90. She's pretty old fashioned. She's pretty opinionated from Newfoundland. You know, she's got opinions, you know, definitely a lot of different bombs come out of her mouth when, you know, certain things. It's like,
I remember you talking about our grandma
you know what I mean?
that one time about the mailman or whatever. And I was like, what? I didn't even know about that story.
It just stuck with me because I remember our mom got so mad, right? Who are these 2 cucks? I don't know. Who are you?
Is he talking about? Oh, okay.
Who comes in the chat like this? Like, get the fuck out of here! Like, who are you?
They just do. So it's going to be something. And when you guys think,
or maybe you meant the guys in the background, Jesus and the other guy,
particularly the Arctic, particularly hemispheric defense, particularly geoeconomically, what this means.
Hey, thanks, Kane.
These 2 cucks are the best. I'm gonna get a t-shirt, the 2 best cucks on YouTube for Canadian political commentary.
Internal logic is going to drive you that somehow we have to figure out how to partner with the United States and what form that takes. That's what President Trump's genius is.
I don't
Conservative
know.
leader.
Like, people, if you just come in and start shouting things, basically just type it and coming at people right away. So you don't really have anything to offer for the community or the stream at all. I feel like you're just kind of like basically a troll. It's just like, get out of here. Like, you know, we don't have time for that. Like, too much. We're already stressed out enough just trying to keep track of everything going on in our political sphere.
Pierre Poilievre says the government should have acted far earlier to clamp down on fentanyl. Poilievre says the federal government shouldn't have waited in appointing a fentanyl czar, stating the deaths of 50,000 Canadians from the drug should have been reason enough. He's also proposing life sentences for anyone convicted of trafficking fentanyl.
It should not take a foreign leader to get the Liberals to wake up to the drug crisis that they have caused here at home. 40 milligrams is enough to kill 20 people. Anyone who is involved in trafficking that amount of fentanyl will get a life sentence we will lock them up and we will throw away the key.
Yeah, to what me and Saul were saying earlier, we kind of grew up in what people in Vancouver, if you talk to someone who like lived in Vancouver and grew up there, they think I grew up in the frickin' boonies, even though we grew up in the greater Vancouver area. It's just like, it's so funny how people think like an hour away somehow is the boonies from downtown Vancouver. And it's just, you know, so we were maybe a little bit of a different community, different experience. People who might have grown up in like Burnaby or Vancouver itself, or, you know, New Westminster. Like, you would have probably had a way different experience than me and Saul did.
Realistic is this? Leslie McBain is the co-founder of the advocacy group Mom Stop the Harm. She joins us tonight from Pender Island, British Columbia. And Leslie, do you think Pierre Poilievre's proposal could be an effective way of lowering the number of drug-related deaths in our country?
No, in a word. It will not work. It has never worked to, as we always say, you can't police your way out of a toxic drug crisis. His statement there has several flaws. One is that he's talking about 40 milligrams of fentanyl, which is a very, very tiny amount. He's also talking, I think, about kingpins. He's going to get the kingpins. Well, the kingpins aren't the ones that are out and about. It's the traffickers.
That's true.
And they would, it's just,
those people can
won't
still
work.
be pretty nasty people, though.
Yeah, I'm just getting thumbnail ideas, just like Poilievre trying to arm wrestle Kingpin from Daredevil, you know, like trying to just like grapple around that big neck a little bit or something. Like,
it won't stop.
And yeah,
the
for the
deaths.
troll thing in chat, like, I think we've managed to maintain a pretty respectful community, considering this is like a right-left coalition show. It could be a lot messier in there, and we're just trying to keep it that way, right? So if people are coming in and they're like insulting us or insulting any of the other people in the chat,
or
then we're just
advocating
gonna
for
boo them.
violence, or
They can watch. They can continue to watch. They just can't join in on the chat if they're going to act like that. That's basically it.
Fentanyl will still be manufactured and be on the toxic black market, and so his ideas simply won't work.
How about the measures being implemented along our border to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. now? Do you think that's going to have any impact on our drug supply here in Canada?
No, I don't think it will have any impact at all. The amount of drugs that are trafficked across the border is, again, it's very small. It will have absolutely to have any impact. It would have to be much greater amounts that are coming across the border, and all the evidence shows that there's just a tiny amount. So I think really it's political, and it's trying to, it's a fear move on the part of both governments.
So you don't see this as an appropriate way to tackle this issue. What, from your experience?
Oh yeah, like CBC's got a direct, whether or not they're bottled by the Liberals, they have with Poilievre targeting them the way he has made a direct adversary of the CBC. You know what I mean?
That's
so
what
the
I was
CBC
saying.
is
Yeah,
going to
like,
have an incentive to attack him because they'll lose all their funding if he gets in office. So yeah, they're gonna.
Well, I mean,
they lose their jobs if he gets in office by what he's said so far. You know what I mean?
Well,
so
what I was going to say is
remarkable.
It's actually remarkable how much they've maintained. Like, they were doing all those this hour's 22 minutes shorts. They were all about Trudeau until he stepped down. They just recently started switching, and they're doing more about Poilievre, and I think they're really funny. That one you posted in the chat the other day, I was like howling at that. I was like, this is really good. And I feel like it's pretty good spirited too. Like, if you can't watch that and laugh, like, I don't know what to say. Like,
yeah, I can't take more glasses off.
Yeah,
it was funny because I wish I could play it on stream, but I don't think I can. But it was kind of funny because, like, I didn't agree with what the guy was saying. I know that comedian's very liberal, but I thought it was still funny. It can still be funny. Like, I thought the idea of I can't take more glasses off, meaning like, there's not much, I don't know what else to do now that everyone else is targeting all these things that I've targeted, right? So now they're taking away his fight, but I still don't think it matters. I think people are pretty set just because they like Pierre more, and I think that's why he will win. Ultimately, not
and
just
it
because of the
shouldn't
carbon tax anymore. Like, even if all of them did all the same things, I think he'd still win.
The whole point of free speech is to be able to throw shots at people like that, right? So, I mean, if you can't, if you don't think it's funny, just don't watch it. You know, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong as long as they're evenly, they're taking shots at both sides. It's not just all directed at one. Then
yeah.
What's the difference, right? That's good.
All this is an opinion piece, right? But I like watching these, gets us talking. But we're kind of running shorter on time than I'd like, so we're gonna skip past this video. We're gonna cut it there.
Good afternoon, everybody.
At the White House press briefing, the bottom line on Donald Trump and his stunner of a proposal for the Gaza Strip.
I heard
President
the podcast ad earlier, where she's like on YouTube and all other streaming platforms.
Weird. It was
oh
like,
my god,
what
dude.
is this
This
podcast
is where we're going.
ad? Like, what is this?
We're gonna be having Blue Chew ads in the middle of the White House press briefings.
I would laugh. It'd be good entertainment, dude. Can you imagine if like every day these just become like Super Bowls? Like there's just like Super Bowl like ads playing, and like they got like performers in the back, like got like flaming sword jugglers. I don't know, like
Side of the box thinker and a
well, he goes on CTV and CP24, so I don't think he does.
visionary leader.
For all who missed it, here's Trump's idea. The U.S. would own Gaza, send the roughly 2 million Palestinians devastated by war to live in some other country or countries, clear the rubble, and build in its place, as Trump put it.
I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise
Just
guy.
wants to build a new Trump tower there on the beach. Sorry,
They
it's
should
it's a bad joke.
For those shipping containers too. I think I was talking to might have been Trevor in the Discord about it. I think that 1%, like it sounds horrible, but I mean the best they can hope for is like 4 or 5%, right? Like that's what I think the States has in the best case scenario. It doesn't get too much better. I think, or actually one of the numbers I saw, it was like 2 to 10%. I was like, that's quite the difference there. Like, I don't know how many they can realistically search, right? Because so many shipping containers come through. And the more you check, the more you slow it down, the more you need more workers. Everything is getting places slower. Like it's a huge hassle, right? So they definitely need to be doing those random searches and maybe like double or even triple them. But I mean, you can't expect them to check every single container. It's just not realistic, right?
But the Riviera of the Middle East.
Inviting the people of the world to then live there. All of it, seemingly regardless of what
Yeah, this whole time everyone's worried about them rebuilding Ukraine into a 15-minute city when really they're going to rebuild Gaza.
This was the plan of the
Honestly,
whole
that's
time.
what he's kind of saying, is they're going to build it into like a 15-minute city. It's like, what is going on? Like, I'm just like, there's huge investment opportunities there, guys. It's just like, what? Like, you know, I don't understand what, where the motivation, like why he's doing this. Especially after becoming elected, is that all? Like that,
dude,
that
he still has all of his financial interest. He doesn't let go of any of his financial ties to his stuff. He just gifted Kash Patel and a bunch of his staff members a whole bunch of stocks from his DJT, like I think it's the Truth Social one. Like he gave them like $800,000 worth of stocks or something. It was like ridiculous.
So a gift, all right.
Yeah, just as a random gift to one of his cabinet members.
Buy them off.
No conflict of interest there.
No buying them off. Like that sounds like a buyout. Is it buy off or something?
Well, it's no one's ever going to call him out on it. Doesn't matter.
Palestinians may want all of them moved out temporarily.
I might be exaggerating the number there. It might be like 200,000 or something.
They need to be
But it was like a lot of stocks in
relocated
total.
out of Gaza for the rebuilding of this effort. Again, it's a demolition site right now. It's not a livable place for any human being.
Reaction to Trump's
that's not
proposal
wrong there.
globally was swift, with some suggesting it would spark fresh hatred. A number of world leaders rejected the idea, including Saudi Arabia.
Hey, I mean, Luca, if they can catch this stuff, I'm all for it. If there was a way to search every single one, absolutely do that. I just don't think it's realistic. I think that's not possible.
United Nations office in Copenhagen.
If they can, they should.
It was labeled nonsense and unlawful.
People talk of ethnic cleansing. No, it's worse. It's worse. It's forced displacement. It's inciting to commit forced displacement, which is an international crime.
Well, it seems like Israel's happy about the idea, so
of course they are. Yeah, this is their dream come true, dude.
Trump, Israeli
Someone
Prime
else
Minister
going to take
Benjamin
responsibility
Netanyahu
for this
met
place?
with the new U.S. Secretary of Defense.
So it's an honor to welcome you to the Pentagon.
With the White House not ruling out using the U.S. military on this, Pete Hegseth was asked directly, is he working on plans for U.S. troops in Gaza?
And we look forward to working with our allies, our counterparts, both diplomatically and militarily, to look at all options. But we certainly would not get ahead of the president.
he's gonna make Gaza great again.
Yeah.
Any details about what we may or may not do. Dude, that's just bad military planning. That's all we have.
Among the countries rejecting Trump's plan, Adrian, Jordan, which is one of the places in which Trump expects Gazans to be resettled. Jordan's King Abdullah will meet with Trump next week here in Washington.
And Paul, as with tariffs, I imagine there are a lot of people wondering, can this be real, or is this a Trump negotiating tactic for something else?
Yeah, well, no one knows. The White House did say
Hurricane in the chat says too, okay, guys, they are run through scanners. These people are really good at getting them through the border, right? Like get better as the security increases. These people will become more and more creative, right?
We could use more, and we could use newer ones. Apparently, is what Pierre was saying from what I took from it.
Yeah, if they can do it,
he's been saying that months,
by all means.
And he was saying
I'm
it would
absolutely
help.
in support of that.
I don't think he said it would completely eliminate. I think he said it would help with the fight against fentanyl and illegal arms smuggling. Because apparently it's a thing where they smuggle arms through our border and then out of our ports too, like weapons and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know why someone's saying, or Lucas saying everything else has not worked. Why knock the idea? I'm not knocking the idea. I'm saying that searching 100% of the containers to me sounds unrealistic. I think there's a reason why the best case scenario in a lot of these cases is like the best case is 10%. Like that's like really, really high rate of search.
Where is he right now? Is he in Pitt Meadows there?
I don't know. I was going to say, I feel like I've delivered to this place before. I don't know where it is though. It looks really familiar to me though.
This is like outside. This is the Metro Vancouver area.
Yeah.
Two opponents vying to become prime minister.
Everyone smiles.
Out in front of the cameras, laying out policies to address what could dominate the next election, Donald Trump.
It should not take a foreign leader to get the Liberals to wake up to the drug crisis that they have caused here at home.
As Trump's tariff threat shakes the political landscape, Conservative leader
he
Pierre
has me for the
Poilievre
first half of that. I don't know why he keeps on saying he caused the drug problem. I don't think that's the case. There was 10
the
cities.
drug problem came literally. We looked into it. It's 2014. It first started to become an issue, and by 2015, 2016, it was a full blown crisis. So right at the start of his
Trudeau become into power.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is at this point it's easy because it's like he's been in power for so long. You could have implemented some real change in this area by now, but you haven't.
I guess.
If anything, you
This is
arguably
a hard
made it worse.
problem to solve.
Arguably, you made it worse.
Everybody's having trouble with it, right?
But arguably, he made it worse with the whole approach that him and others have.
It's. I think I've said this on stream before, but like there's that whole idea too of like people look at the number up or number down, but we forget that like, yeah, you could be right. Maybe if we'd had a better government, that number maybe would have still gone up, but it might not have gone up as much, right? Like there could have been improvement there. That I can obviously I'll concede that.
Improvements of I think his whole strategy was just poured gasoline on it. Honestly, the decriminalizing drugs, like, this whole fight, all these experimental trial, this whole experimental process. Was
a lot of it is
like what was
I listened to a podcast the other day about something they were doing in the States where they're trying like it's like not naloxone or whatever that stuff's called that they methadone, not naloxone's the.
Yeah, we're doing it. Apparently,
people,
though, the numbers do not
for
even
people
compare.
in jail, right?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
But they have this new injection drug they give people, and it actually apparently they start doing it like a month or ish around when people are about to leave jail, and it's like had a really high success rate. But it's like not giving people just fentanyl. I don't think that's obviously not the answer, right? But to have a more like care focused approach, like, hey, there's clearly an issue here. You're not taking care of yourself. You can't take care of a house. Like, we need to put this person to a jail until they can clean themselves up. But
public awareness and outreach isn't a problem. It's the fact is like they basically just went and took like, oh, you guys doing this anyways. So instead of just helping you guys get away from this, we're just gonna let you do it in front of us and give you all the supplies you need to survive it better. It's like that's basically
what do you
like? You know what I mean?
What was the point of that there?
They were apparently trying something, but they
no,
should have
legalizing hard drugs.
Sooner. Like they should have reversed those decisions a lot sooner. They put them in. They experimented.
What was the reason for doing it?
Trial process. They wanted to try and see if it would work. From what they've admitted, it was a trial process.
What was the point? Work to what? Work to
obviously addressing this issue, this crisis,
reduce the deaths, right?
Yeah, but they instead just made it a super like drug friendly environment to a degree. You know what I mean? Which is like
it makes it seem okay,
in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't be making people comfortable in their misery.
Yeah. Shouldn't be condoning this kind of behavior. And that's my same thing with like with a lot of these things the Liberal government has done. It's just wild.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff is it's people are trying to put a Band-Aid on like a ship that's gushing water out of it, and they're trying to like put a little bit of duct tape over it to keep the water from flowing out. But obviously that's not going to fix the problem, right?
New subscriber.
It might prevent a little bit of the water spilling out, but you're not going to get past that.
New subscriber, Fonz Martin, the Fonz. Hey, nice, buddy. Nice to see you. Welcome to the stream, buddy.
Yeah,
Thank you for your
thanks,
support.
Fonz.
On fentanyl trafficking, one of the U.S. president's top concerns.
There will be life sentences for anyone caught trafficking, producing, or exporting over 40
the reality too is
milligrams.
that like, people get drugs in jail. Like, doesn't matter how hard the security is, people figure it out. You get more and more creative.
There's a
They
difference
figure out
between
ways to get
that
past it.
and safe injection sites. You know what I mean? Like this
I
is such
agree,
a different
I agree,
safe
I agree.
supply.
I'm not trying to say that.
Safe
I'm not trying to
injection
say
sites,
that.
Safe supply.
I'm just saying
decriminalizing the drugs. It's like you guys made it real easy for people here. Like real easy. Like turning them into these victims is what did it. You know what I mean? And like arguably, since the immersion of it's like anyways, let's just get through this video.
I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I'm just trying to say that like people are approaching the problem from two different angles, right? Some people are saying let's just get rid of all the drugs, and the other people are saying, well, clearly we can't get rid of all of them. Is there a way we can stop people from dying? Stop people from taking
it's just like
toxic
how are
drugs?
we supposed to?
I'm not saying that's the right approach or that I agree with it.
Reverse
I'm just saying that's what
psychology.
people are saying,
If we
right?
let them do them, they'll stop. You know what I mean? Like,
I
it's like
don't
that.
really-
It's
I don't
just
think
a
that's
long
actually the
reverse
approach.
psychology trial.
It's like people are drinking. It's like people are drinking like bleach or something, and you're like, "Hey, can you drink this like water that has a little bit of bleach in it instead of drinking the actual bleach?" Like it's just sounds stupid. You're still feeding people bleach, right? But like, there's people who are going to say, "Oh, let's just ban all of it, and they can't drink it anymore." It's a stupid metaphor, but I'm just saying, like, the goal there isn't to fix the problem by giving them drugs to get rid of the drugs. The goal there was just to reduce deaths. So it's a completely different goal, right? Like it's not the same thing.
Of fentanyl.
I think what we would...
Near the Canada-U.S. border, Liberal leadership contender Mark Carney's proposal is to make Canada less reliant on the U.S.
We must diversify our trading relationships.
I just can't take them seriously when they use that language, right? At least Pierre's team knows to avoid words like that, like inclusion and diversify.
Yeah, he gets a little bit too intense with that too, though.
People get triggered
because
by
he
those
got all
words.
triggered that one time when they called it a harm reduction site, and he's like, why are you calling it that? He's like, these are drug dens. They're the Trudeau drug dens, and that's what we need to call them.
It was a David
Okay,
Eby
but I'm
drug
just saying,
den.
you're doing the same thing where it's
David
like
Eby, Bonnie
replace,
Henry
like,
drug
no,
den.
you have to refer to it politically correct in the way that I'm saying it exactly, or I'm not even going to answer your question. It's like, okay, you know what he's talking about, right? Like, you know what he's referring to. You can even call it. You can say, again, I don't like to call them the harm reduction. I don't think they're reducing any harm. I'm calling them drug dens. But instead, he's like trying to get the other guy to repeat what he's saying, and just like, I don't know, it's cringe to me.
He's also promising to boost military spending 2 years faster than the government's plan. Trump's taken aim at Canada for not meeting its NATO spending target and said it should become America's 51st state.
My government would work to reach
I'm definitely one of those people, Kane.
2% of GDP in defense spending by the end of this decade and pull our full weight in NATO.
All of this unfolding on the same day the Prime Minister spoke to premiers for the first time since Trump paused tariffs for 30 days.
As long as Donald Trump is president, the risk of tariffs will never go away.
The government's working with provinces and territories to simplify and speed up trade between provinces, suggesting those changes could happen in the next 30 days.
The momentum is palpable. The moment is here, and we are seizing the moment.
In this moment, it's unclear what Trump will do next. The Prime Minister will host an economic summit on Friday with business and industry leaders.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. The Riviera of the Middle East. This could be so magnificent.
I'm done with the Middle East stuff.
This whole area has been fenced off, starting from here at Science World, stretching all along the seawall to the Creekside Community Center. That's all going to be shut down until further notice, and that is due to the aging expo deck structure that supports.
Oh, okay. Someone told me this was for a different reason. I wanted to watch the video here because apparently people were saying it was some unknown. There's a lot of speculation as to why this area was fenced off today on X and stuff. And I guess they're giving an official answer for it.
This part of the seawall. Now, the city of Vancouver says an inspection showed that there were a number of cracks on the underside of the structure, and out of an abundance of caution, they decided to shut it down.
We don't know if they're cracks of substance where moisture might have got.
We don't really care about that.
Grace Lenoir and her friend huddle under a small tarp on a sidewalk in Vancouver's downtown east side. They use their belongings to try to block the cold.
I don't wish it upon anybody, but it's hard just to know that, you know, you're given something, you know, a place to sleep that's warm, and then there to fend for yourself.
After spending the night at a warming center, Lenoir is back on the street. She says everyone had to leave by 7 a.m.
You know, we just kind of wait until other places that are open during the day, which is at 9 a.m. So that leaves us like with 3 hours of not knowing what to do.
The city of Vancouver says it opens warming centers overnight when temperatures drop below -4 degrees Celsius or it feels like -4. But advocates like Amanda Burrows say daytime temperatures are too frigid for some.
Why do we then still not have anywhere for people to go during the day when it is still cold and people are wandering around with their belongings?
The city says some warming centers are in spaces run by other groups that use them during...
Yeah, like Vancouver, I don't know if you guys ever seen this. It's pretty wild down there. It's like it doesn't get cold enough where you can kind of live outside all year round, right? Like you basically need somewhere to sleep at night and to get refuge from the cold and dry off. Because even in the coldest days, you can still get soaking wet in Vancouver. You know what I mean? Like it's not like northern BC or Alberta or any of the rest of the country where you have like just that dry cold. Like that doesn't even really exist in Vancouver.
In the day, it says people can go to public libraries and community centers. Upkar Tatley has been running this emergency daytime shelter in White Rock since 2020.
Like emergency shelters set up in portables now?
He says their services make it a success.
It's not something that's brick and mortar in the traditional sense. It's not something that will occupy a huge...
Hey, this is what we come to. We're basically just popping up trailers for people to keep for the level of homeless people we have to keep warming. So not enough room for them in the shelters. Or there's not enough resources for them. Or we have too many. It's just wild. Like
this is the problem, right? It's like we really don't know. It's no one knows how to deal with this. It's really difficult. We've tried a lot of things. Not a lot of things work. The success rate's really low. You know, even for the best case scenario, when people do go to treatment, there's not a super high success rate.
Space for a long period of time. It is just that it's there for the period of emergency to provide relief for those individuals who need it the most.
Tatley says he hopes to partner with other communities struggling to provide support to vulnerable people.
We'll port in local health services, so nurses, doctors, pharmacies, social workers. We'll also have employment counselors.
Tatley says he's confident his daytime shelter model can be replicated in other cities to try to bring more people in from the cold. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC.
A new $1.3 billion plan to secure the Canada-U.S. border includes out.
No, as soon as we get through the list I put together,
okay, I'm just gonna go for just give me like 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, no worries. I'll just keep going.
Okay.
Fitting the RCMP with helicopters, drones, and mobile surveillance towers, and creating a new joint strike force to go after organized crime. The union representing workers with the Canada Border Services Agency says the agency can do more to check cargo containers.
Right now, our capacity is inspecting 1% or less of what is coming in, which is
so back to Saul's point, they're inspecting what?
Says the agency can do more to check cargo containers.
Right now, our capacity is inspecting 1% or less of what is coming in, which is
we're only inspecting 1% or less of what is coming in. Is that really? Is that actually real?
quite low.
Ottawa is promising artificial intelligence and imaging tools.
We estimate we're short between 2,000 and 3,000 officers at the CBSA specifically. And then when you look at what's coming in between ports of entry, which is also a problem, right now that's not something that we're doing at all. We've kind of just left it to the RCMP to do, and now we see provinces chipping in.
Fentanyl is considered 50 times stronger than heroin and has resulted in thousands of overdose deaths. The leader of the federal Conservatives is promising to get tough on high-level fentanyl dealers. He pointed to a massive, sophisticated drug lab near the tiny BC community of Falkland. Poilievre says fentanyl production must be treated like mass murder, and efforts should target super.
Yeah, like I feel like we should be hitting a little higher than 1%. Like I don't know if did I hear that right? Like only 1% of them, less than 1%, actually get inspected.
Labs.
40 milligrams is enough to kill 20.
Like, granted, we probably, Saul might be right on 100%. It's a little ridiculous, but like, what about like 10, 20%? Like, is that something we could do? Like, like what I mean? Like, shouldn't we be doing like a systematic sweep spot check so we can kind of map it all out, so people would have to, like there's a way we could do this, I feel like.
20 people. Anyone who is involved in trafficking that amount of fentanyl will get a life sentence. We will lock them up and we will throw away the key.
Life sentences in those types of cases are currently at the discretion of judges.
Our country has been known to be an enabler of these threat networks, including the cartels, including the triads, including certain Middle Eastern networks.
The key to tackling the issues, according to this strategic security advisor, is changing legal framework to better tackle money laundering of drug profits.
If at the end of the day we can't deliver on prosecution and conviction, there's no consequences.
Still, it's unclear if efforts to boost security measures at the border will be enough to deter tariffs from being imposed by the U.S. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
No, they're being scanned. Stop there. Run through the scanner. Okay, so you're saying it's less 1% are actually checked. Is that what the argument is here? Inspections happen when we see something unusual. Okay.
Vancouver.
Because yeah, that seems incredibly reckless to only know about 1% of the goods coming into your country. Like I understand the idea of spot checking. I understand it's not going to be every single thing checked, but with that statement, he said we only know about 1% of that's the thing is like, is that referring to the scanners or is that referring to the physical open the container open and check? That's what I would like to know.
Afia Hagen, our CTV royal commentator. Afia, thanks as always for joining us.
Good to be here.
What do you make of all this? The Heritage Foundation trying to go after the prince. What is there to benefit from that?
Well, this is all about them trying to find out Prince Harry's visa status and basically whether he lied on his visa application. And that would be in relation to him taking drugs. Now, he talked in Spare, his memoir, that came out quite extensively about the different types of drugs he has taken. And if he had put that on his visa application, then it probably would have been rejected. So the question is, did he put that on his visa application and was it overlooked by the Department of Homeland Security, or is he on a protected type of visa, like perhaps a diplomatic visa, which is called, I think it's an A1 visa, an A1 diplomatic.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about this one. I thought it was relevant just because it says conservative think tank investigating Prince Harry's U.S. immigration status. So I wanted to know what the hell they were talking about here. I thought it's still kind of relevant since we gave like $3 billion to the Crown, I think, just this last quarter.
Status visa, which means he wouldn't necessarily or that wouldn't necessarily come into play, or did he put it on the visa application and was it ignored? And the Heritage Foundation, like I said, this right-wing think tank, have made it one of their personal missions to get Prince Harry to reveal the visa application and the visa status. Now, they say it's because they want everyday citizens to have confidence in the Department for Homeland Security, and it's to make sure that they are doing their job properly. But it is coming across like perhaps it's a personal mission against Prince Harry.
And has Harry commented on this at all? Or anybody in the royal family?
He has not commented on it, neither has anyone in the
So this is
royal.
just a nothing burger.
In Quebec, an Angus Reid poll found 67% of Canadians were proud or very proud to be Canadian, up from 58% in December. For Quebecers, that number jumped even higher, rising from 45 to 58%. Joining me now is our CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader, Tom Mulcair. Tom, thanks as always for joining us.
Good to be with you, Roger.
Well, nothing brings Canadians together like bad Americans, right? It always gets us going and gets our pride coming out when the Americans do something. The big question is, what are the politicians up here going to do with it?
Well, I can tell you that in addition to the poll we just looked at, there's a Léger poll that dropped overnight that is astounding. It shows a massive boost for the Liberals, especially if Carney takes over. So you put that together with the uncertainty and the insecurity that Trump is wreaking and the havoc that he's bringing to the economic sphere, and you understand that Canadians are looking for sound management. The jump for the Liberals is really 9 points. I mean, that has them way ahead of the Bloc Québécois and the Conservatives in third place in Quebec. So people are sitting up and taking notice of that. I'll add one other detail from that Léger poll. It's the lowest ebb for support for sovereignty, separatism in Quebec in a long time. It's down to 33%. 1/3 exactly. It had been in the 40% range. So that's a significant drop. So you can sense that, yes, you know, the anger about Trump is bringing people together into
nothing unites like a common. You know, this is the thing, right? It's like people, I guess we get lumped in with Americans a lot. So I feel like we do kind of have to put our foot down sometimes and be like, you know, it is nice when we're able to highlight the difference between being Canadian and American, because it does make us feel like, hey, you know, we're not just, you know, America's tiny little brother, so to speak, right? And even then, you know, people might argue we're more closer to Britain than them, given our relationship to the crown, right? And over the past 100 years, over everything that Canada's been through. And I think it's just something that, you know, there's been a long fight for Canada's independence, in my opinion. Long fight. And we finally, like, we really haven't even really gotten it yet. Like, we've pretty much almost gotten there, but we're still heavily reliant on the crown, and they're siphoning, and we're giving them money. You know what I mean?
terms of patriotism, but it's also, to put it simply, the fear and the insecurity that comes with the threats of Trump that's bringing people together. Here in Quebec, you know, people might say, oh, yeah, I'd love to have an independent Quebec, separate, yeah. But you can just imagine, in the midst of all that insecurity, a lot of people are just saying, no, the last thing we need right now is a leap into the void. So it's really shaking the foundations of Canadian politics, no question about that.
So what does Pierre Poilievre do with this? I mean, he had virtually an untouchable lead. Now it's maybe looking touchable.
It's very tough for him and for all opposition leaders. They're just looking for a place. Now, I have to say that Poilievre has done a better job than most of finding subjects. He's had to pivot away from the carbon tax because that's dead. He's had to pivot away from his constant attacks on Trudeau because
what are you talking about, Tom? That's not dead yet. They just repackaged it, Tom. Like, you act like that's dead. Like, it's not dead. Mark Carney said he's going to tax. He's still going to tax production. He's only getting to the consumer side of the carbon tax. It's still going to drive up grocery prices. It's still going to drive up our beef prices, our mushroom prices, tomato prices, numerous other items of produce all get driven up from that industry side of the carbon tax, right? Like you know what I mean? Like, it's not over with, Tom.
So he's had to come up with other stuff. Yesterday, he gave us the beta version of one of his attacks on Carney. He called him an elitist and globalist. Well, at a time when there is...
Yeah, they're saying it's a touchable lead. He's still ahead by 22 points. Like, what? What are they talking about?
Serious economic worry across the country. Someone who's actually governed the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England through very tough times in both.
I know, I was a little triggered. My stutter was coming out.
Cases, and has led some of the largest private investment funds in the world. That's quite a CV compared to Mr. Poilievre's CV, which has one entry which says politician. So I think that people are giving Carney a proper look, and it will,
like they're trying to
of course,
install this.
Start to eat into the numbers.
It's like they're trying to install this narrative that, oh, now that Carney's turned on the carbon tax, no, we don't know what Poilievre's going to do. It's just like, what? Like, it's just like, you're like, no, that's not it at all. There's way more beyond that. It's way more than just the carbon tax.
Of the Conservatives of Pierre Poilievre.
And just before we go, how much do you think people will be watching the Ontario election to see how that goes? And would that kind of maybe be a predictor for how the federal election might go?
Yes and no, because even though they're both conservative, in the case of Doug Ford, progressive conservative, I don't know that you can necessarily make a permutation where you shift one over to the other, because Doug Ford is Doug Ford. He's a populist, yes, but he's also a middle-of-the-road conservative. And that's where I think Carney is going to be able to make his mark. Poilievre has been talking to his fringe, his extremes. He'd also done
his fringe, his extremes. Like what? What?
Done a masterful political job of talking to younger people who had been always in Trudeau's camp and saying, look.
Honestly, Poilievre didn't really talk to me. I just figured, hey, this sucks. This living sucks. As I'm getting older, getting a home is getting more and more unattainable. And I'm not saying that is all at Trudeau's fault there, but that's what got me interested in all this stuff. It was my anger towards Trudeau that was already there. And I think for a lot of people, and had me looking into a lot of these things and realizing how bad at his job he was and how much damage Trudeau has actually done to this country. He is literally the worst prime minister of all time through all of Canada's history. And for you to say that Poilievre's an extremist, like what? He was part of the progressive conservatives until recently.
You know, you're getting taken to the cleaners. You know, the older generation was able to buy houses. You won't be able to. So he talked about housing. He talked about cost of living, and he drew a lot of people over. But he was...
Oh, there you go. I guess I'm one of those people, Tom.
Talking about insecurity economically. Now, Carney offers an alternative in terms of talking seriously about the economy. Will it be enough to reverse people's negative impressions and memories of the Trudeau years? That remains to be seen.
This is why the NDP is not in power and Tom's career is over. We're going to skip it. There's like 5 seconds left.
But it's certainly shaking things up.
Okay, Tom, thank you.
What a dumbass. What a freaking moron, Tom Mulcair.
What are we looking at for the data? I'm guessing people kind of like it.
Yeah, they kind of like it, but did they head over to the stores and take it?
Okay, so I thought this was interesting. They talk about the GST holiday not actually affecting sale records at all. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to check it out here.
Out their wallets and their credit cards, Roger, is the big question. And it looks like year over year, they did not. So the last day of this HST GST tax break is February 15th. But Moneris, which is a Canadian commerce company, looked at how much did Canadians actually take advantage of this between the 1 month span of December 14th to January 15th. Looking at that 1 month, and you look at your screen here, overall spending in dollars was down 4%.
What extremists is Poilievre talking to? Please let me know, because like I have, that is beyond my knowledge of extremists he's associating with and talking to. Like really, the only extremist group they were saying he had a flag of on his trailer literally was saying horrible things about his wife, and he was really angry at them, and that's why they were actually targeting him. You know what I mean? So what other extremists? Please let me know. Please tell me. I would love to know.
Year over year. So comparing this past month to this time last year, the number of transactions that stores saw was also down 1%, and the transaction size, which is the amount bought per transaction, was down 3%. Let's break it down by province as well. Moneris looked at the data in the provinces and the territories as well. And it looks at, if you see the numbers on your screen, most provinces and the territories in Atlantic Canada saw a decline this past month when compared to the previous year when it comes to consumer spending as well. Only Saskatchewan saw a bit of a bump. Manitoba stayed the same year over year. Taking a look at what people were buying and whether it was an increase or a decrease, you look at that on the top of your screen. Children's clothing was actually up 8%. So when people were trying to take advantage of this.
So it doesn't seem like this this GST break actually did that much for everything. I just thought it was interesting to kind of go over the numbers that are going over here. I guess we're getting dragged back to the other point here. So, and this is the last video I had to go, so we're just going to go to the other screen now. It's pretty much it for the reaction stuff today. The argument has been made that he's been associated with MAGA movement and parrots some of their talking points and mannerisms. I don't think so. I think more likely he has like this like common sense approach, which comes off as MAGA, and not to mention Trump actually coined the MAGA sense, MAGA sense, the common sense thing. He literally said in multiple rallies, it's just common sense numerous times, right? He coined that. Okay. Yeah, sorry, maybe Saul wants to push back here. What extremists
No. I was going to say on the thing they were just talking about, the consumer spending thing, that's huge. This is literally when I was talking before about looking for this type of data to signify if there's an actual recession. This is very foreboding.
Yeah.
If consumer spending is down, that's a significant, that actually means that people are spending less money, right?
Look at this. It's literally only children's clothes that went up.
Because in the States, they were talking about recession stuff, but consumer spending this year was way higher than the year before, right? So seeing data like this signifies that that's not good for the economy.
Yeah, like everyone's been saying, we're not one of the best economies in the G7 right now. We're not. Like, I don't care what you say, how many taglines you give me, I'm not buying it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
this is a very bad. This is like literally, this is exactly what I've been waiting to see, is data like this, and this is not good.
Yeah, anyways, I'm just saying, other people have said, no, sorry, I'm not triggered at you. I was more of just like, I get frustrated because it's like a thing I deal with all the time. People call him extreme and MAGA, and I'm like, dude, like, if you've watched Pierre Poilievre, I don't get that at all. Like, and that's why I love the way he's been handling Trump lately, honestly, and how he's been painting Carney and Trudeau as loving Trump and giving them bouquets of flowers. Like, I think that's great.
Well, I've been giving him a lot of props for the way he's been handling Trump as well. I think that he's actually had the strongest language out of anybody towards him.
Yeah.
Any of the federal leaders, anyways. Or the people running to be prime minister.
To call him, like the way what Tom said, painting every Pierre supporter as some kind of extremist, and they're like, how they're acting like Carney has a chance. Like, do you guys not see the polls? We're looking at the same polls. The Angus Reid polls still has the Conservatives at 43 and the Liberals at 21.
43 is quite a dip from what were they at before? Like 51? Like they were
46.
super high.
46.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's not that.
It was before Trudeau resigned. They were at like 57 at a point, and then Trudeau resigned.
That's what I was talking about.
And then they lost like 10 points, but I think that's
like 14 points, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's
57.
But I think that's the worst.
43.
I don't think they'll lose more than that.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't.
I don't think that there's still. But the problem here is that 43. That means that a coalition government is potentially possible, right? That's what they're scared of. It's not that the Liberals are going to sweep and get a majority. It's that they can.
I don't think so. At this point, the vote's so split between Liberal, NDP, and LeBlanc. Like, they're taking.
Yeah, I think they're going to hurt each other more.
Like, any potential.
That's my worry with
the Liberals. Don't even know who they are right now. You know what I mean? Like, they really don't.
Well,
they need like a.
That's what I was going to say too. Is
to get their shit together before they're fit for government again.
The Mark Carney thing. Like, as much as I like Mark Carney, like, nobody who is on the fence between NDP and the Liberals is going to vote for a globalist banker, right? Like, that's where you're going to lose a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I think everyone's just sick and tired of these same kind of people running the country, right? Everyone's just like, we want change, we want something different, you know, we want someone who relates to us more and seems like they understand what we're going through. And I think that's where Pierre Poilievre has a real strong suit in his communication skills and everything. And I don't think Mark Carney can sell himself that way as well as Poilievre can. And I think, not to mention, Poilievre's been campaigning for years at this point. He's literally been running one of the longest campaigns in history at this point. Because I guess for the last
he's kept up the steam
like
until just now. This is the first hiccup he's really seen. And yeah, to Kane, I also, that's when I like him the most, is things when he talks about his past, like where he grew up, and when he talks about the stuff with America, I wasn't expecting him to push back as much as he did. So that was refreshing to see.
In the House of Commons that they had a plan to instill Mark Carney as Liberal leader. And I thought it was just crazy at the time. But look what's happening. It's like, doesn't it make you think that the Liberals are all just kind of like playing the political game, the Game of Thrones or Game of Ministers, whatever you want to call it, playing musical chairs of power around this Liberal leadership just to hand it to Mark Carney in the end? And it seems like Mark Carney would win it anyways. I don't think that's the goal
necessarily. That could be what
he'll probably win it.
Could be what a lot of members want. But like, the reason Karina Gold and Krista Freeland are running is not to like just put on a show. It's because they think that there's a possibility that Carney won't secure that leadership.
But we'll see.
And it's possible. He might not. I don't know how he's going to play with the general audience.
Well, I just think the Liberals should just call an election, hand the keys over to someone else and figure their shit out and then come back. You know what I mean? Like, why are we doing this? Like, just preventing the country from progressing and holding us back, making us a laughing stock on the global stage and just damaging us.
There's the only people, well, I mean, not the only people, but the people I would blame the most for that are Trudeau and Singh. I think that they're the ones who, well, Trudeau in particular, he should have stepped down a year ago. Like the fact that you could step down now at the last second after Trump's already installed, like
it's
what are you doing? Like why screw everybody over like this? Nobody appreciated that, right? I bet you his whole party probably hates him right now.
And I think they're all in favor of it, and that's why I said where I don't think the Liberals.
Well,
are
they're in favor of the prorogation because they want
all these dumbasses, all of these little seals ready to clap, coming to the door, being like, "Yeah, we love Mark Carney," and now everyone's just like, "Oh, so he's not separated." And then Mark Carney returned the endorsements. It's like, dude, like, how are you separating yourself from them? He said they've all done a great job. He's referring to like Philippe Champagne. They
said they're doing important work. I thought is what I heard.
No, he said they're doing a great job. He said they're doing a great job.
Oh,
okay.
I
said he's literally endorsing, giving them kudos. Right.
He's talking about the people who were in America, right, negotiating with Trump.
Well, just the Team Canada, who's
Jolie
doing such a great
and
job with all this. You know what I mean?
LeBlanc, is that the other guy who was there?
No, well, Philippe Champagne, I think, is involved. LeBlanc and a couple others. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just a little triggered today. Thing is, I'm just getting so frustrated with all this crap, and I'm getting frustrated with just the arrogance of Trudeau and just how smug he was in that Black History conference. Just made me so mad. I'm like, dude, like, do you not realize how many people?
That's my biggest problem with him.
Like, it's just
I just think he's so insincere. Like, I just can't take anything he says like it's honest. It just doesn't come off like that. And people are going to feel the same about Carney, but I feel like at the very least, I don't get that same vibe from Carney. He gives me more of like a normal, just a person talking and trying to make his case to you, right? And I think that he doesn't have enough of the flair for theatrics, I think, to like really, I don't know how much that's required in Canada, honestly, because I think if I look back, the leaders aren't super theatric people like Harper and Chrétien and all these guys. Like, they weren't showboaty people, right? They were very like matter of fact, like Poilievre is a different style of leader than we're used to. And I think I still think he's most likely to win the election, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Carney, I don't know. I'll see if he secures the nomination. We'll see what happens.
All right. Or you mean liberal leadership, whatever. Yeah, we'll be finding out. I guess we have to sit here with no government, basically shit.
You need a little bit of theatrics, I think. I'm
so done with the lack of progress in this country in the last 3 months. Like, what have we really accomplished besides just fighting over who's going to control the country? That's why I'm so mad at all of these people, because it's like you've literally put your own interests in front of this entire country. Jagmeet Singh and Trudeau, like, there should be some kind of prison time for them from what they've been doing, in my opinion.
I don't know if that's
at this point. There should be a crime. It's illegal. The amount of scandals, like, there should be a number of ethics breaches you can commit before it's officially you can get incarcerated by it. You know what I mean? And just
I think
Trudeau,
your party,
like at this point,
the Liberals need to install that whatever the Conservatives have, where they can vote their own leader out. Absolutely, because I think if they had that, Trudeau would have been gone a long time ago. And that is something that makes the process more democratic, right? Because these are the people who are actually you're actually just voting for your ministers.
Country. It's like we have no control. It's like, do you guys feel like you have any control over your own country at all? Like, that's why I get frustrated. Like, it's like, I don't feel we do.
He's gone. He's gone.
Is he? We're still here.
He's leaving.
Is he? He's dragging his feet.
He's on his way out the door.
6 months to leave at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
it's like,
okay.
He's taking forever. It's the longest leaving, put it on his coat and shoes ever. Like, it's.
Okay, but he's putting on his coat and shoes. I mean, what more? I don't know. I mean, we could ask him to move quicker, but the reality is that he's lost power. He's lost support. He's never going to win another election in his life. Like he said, he's going to be on a beach somewhere. And I think that's probably true. He probably is going to have to leave for a while before he shows face again. It won't be a Canadian beach. Yeah.
A huge expense for his security on our tax dollars. Like, we're going to have to pay for this guy's security forever now. Like, you think he's not going to have lifelong security? Like, this guy's going to need lifelong security. Like, I don't think he realizes how much people hate him. Like, you know what I mean?
I think he knows now. I think it's starting to sink in.
Hopefully.
When it must have been a real hit to see that pole jump after he stepped down. That must have been like, oh, okay. So clearly I was the problem.
Even then, it wasn't a significant jump. It was like a 5 point jump.
It's a significant enough jump that, like, the 57 to 43, that's
my favorite
huge.
Though is the internal Liberal voting intention, and the winner of that was none of the above. When everyone had a choice between what candidate
I know. Yeah, I saw that.
it was like 22% was none of the above. I just thought it was so funny. And I feel like that was like an episode in Community or something where they made the joke of like, because that was like the winner of the election was none of the above.
None of the above.
So, anyways, I think we're pretty much it for today. I got no more, what grinds my gears rants. I think that's it for me on that. I don't know if you have anything else you want to talk about, Saul, or say.
No, I don't think so. Oh, I could do the thing. The thing I was talking about earlier. I don't know how much time do we have.
I don't know. I've got time. Like I was just
okay. So I was just thinking about the other day. I was kind of talking to you about this, but the idea about like been thinking about a lot about like the level of honesty we can expect from a politician, and I was thinking about the Trump thing and how he was saying like he's going to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours and stuff, and it's like I don't know how much that was a lie, right? Like maybe he really did think that he could do that, and that there's a big difference between that and him just like lying straight up about something that happened and pretending it didn't happen, right? Like we should notice the differences between those things. So like we have this bar we set for a politician. We're like, they said they were going to do this. They said they were going to do this. A lot of the time they're saying what they want to do, but if they're not an authoritarian, they're going to have a hard time getting an agenda pushed through that isn't agreeable for everybody. Right? That's the problem. That's why government's so dysfunctional right now, is because the country's split in America and Canada, right? It's hard to get anything done because we don't agree on what we should do. And, back to that Mr. Sunshine Baby interview he did, I really respected kind of the approach he was taking where he was saying, find the common ground and move in that direction. We all want to see Canada do
and that's
better.
what this channel is supposed to be about too. And that's where
exactly.
Sometimes we both forget that. Like I forget it.
That's why I wanted, I really did want to shout that out. I hope that there's some way for me to get that message out to him. I didn't want to reply on Twitter because I felt like every other reply I'd done was kind of, I was egging him on a little bit just because he was like insulting Krista Freeland's ankles and stuff on Twitter. I was like, buddy, like, what are you doing? And then I saw that interview.
He's making a lot of money for those tweets, dude. He makes good money for insulting Krista Freeland's ankles.
maybe, but
he's probably making...
I appreciate that he stepped up and he said, I need to take a lot of responsibility with, like, I have a big platform and I need to use it responsibly. And I think that that's really good to see that one of the biggest Canadian content creators right now is saying that. I appreciate it. I'm happy to see it. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyways,
we're hoping to move forward more in that direction as well. We're hoping to eventually get some panels going with people. I'd love to host panels. I think I could do it. I could be the guy in the chair hosting the panel, connecting people in. Most people probably want to argue with Saul in today's political climate, but that's fine with me. I'll argue with people that want to argue. And if you're a creator and you're watching this and we don't care if you're smaller, like we'd love to, argue with you about stuff or discuss whatever you're up for. You don't really care. If you've watched
and our goal
for a wild ride potentially. So
I think if we do end up getting bigger, like we will absolutely bring on smaller creators to like argue and whatever they want to do. I think that's something that is needed a little bit more in this space as well. I think, especially on the Canadian side, is a little more collaboration. So yeah, throwing that out too. Yeah, exactly what Justus said. If you're another content creator and you're watching us, give us a shout. We'll be more than happy to like watch your content on stream if you want us, or if you want to engage with us at all, just give us a shout out.
Yeah, and for sure. Even if like to me, it's not even about like we want to. It's not about. It's about offering our already current existing viewership something a little bit off the usual, right? That's more what I want to focus on. And I'm trying to think of like people we can get on, professionals as well, which are more reluctant to come onto a political channel these days because some people risk their jobs. If you're not in politics, like you can risk your job going into like a political space. You know what I mean? Like I have friends who said he'd love to come in, but he's worried that his union would find out and he'd lose his job. So I was like, okay. All right, that's a thing in Canada. So you don't.
I think you're probably fine. Just
in some
spaces,
people don't feel
crazy.
like they have absolute freedom of speech, though. Maybe they just don't feel like they can comment politically.
Well, I think the other thing too, people don't want to be attributed with some of the things other people are saying too. But I think where I'm coming from, and something that I saw too a lot through like 2020, like the whole COVID thing, was just kind of seeing a lot of the division that sprung up. And I mean, I hope that that like during that whole thing, I at no point was like trying to cut off family members or be super judgmental about people who had other opinions on that stuff. I would argue about the logic sometimes that was being used, but I mean, throughout the whole thing, I think I agreed with your take on it. I didn't have any problems with it, just because like the way that you kind of were thinking about it and how you felt about it, I thought was totally, that's a decision you're allowed to make and you should be allowed to make. And it does suck that people were kind of made to feel very otherized by somebody who's supposed to be the leader of our country and the leader of all the people who live here,
it's a very, I remember that. I still can't get the whole, like, him throwing his hands up in the air saying, you think you're going to get on a plane? You think you're going to go to a restaurant? Like, it was almost, I literally thought we had a dictator when I watched that speech. I was like, he's going full dictator. I was like, get Sunshine Baby on the phone. Like, this guy, he's got a title for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, anyways, that's it for today, guys. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be no morning show, I think, or I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do morning or afternoon. I haven't made my mind up yet because I have some stuff I have to drive to the city, which is ways away for me. So it's a day trip to go to Costco where I live. It's a day trip. Just go to Costco. But so I have to do that tomorrow. But I might do it in the morning. I might just do a quick show in the morning and then go instead. But I'll post in the Discord what I'm going to be doing. If you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. Links in the description below. Not to mention, if you guys haven't followed us on our other platforms, you can follow us there as well. We're on Twitter, X, all the social media stuff. All the links are in the description as well. All right, guys.
Yeah, I've got a Twitter too. I should probably it's GroundedTV Saul. I have 0 followers and I'm only following 20 people. And have mostly just shit posted at Mr. Sunshine Baby, so it's not a very active Twitter. But yeah, I deleted a bunch of the tweets I did at him because I was
on the GroundedTV Twitter thinking it's my Twitter a lot. But anyways, apparently it's all me.
I saw you do that actually.
Posting. Yeah. Anyways, thanks guys. We will see you tomorrow. And I'll let you guys know the time.